vote instead. The counting of votes will take place on 21st of July, and the country's next president will be sworn in on the 25th of July. Remember, current President Ramnath Kovind's 5-year tenure will end on the 24th of this month. So let me give you a sense of this race for the Raisina Hill, how the numbers clearly are in favor of Droupadi Murmu. Droupadi Murmu, NDA's candidate, her announcement, remember, was almost surprised a number of political parties, including Mamata Banerjee, who said that had NDA announced her candidature before they went ahead and announced Yashwant Sinha, she would have stood for the first tribal president, keeping clearly in mind the tribal constituency that is there in Bengal. The numbers are clearly stacked in favor of Droupadi Murmu. She is set to get over 60% of votes. A number of political parties have come out in support of her. The surprise elements aren't really many, I would say, but Shiv Sena breaking ranks from Mahavikas Aghadi allies. We have seen the TDP come out in support of her. The JMM, India's only tribal party, backing her. All this clearly keeping in mind their own electoral calculations. Against her is Yashwant Sinha. Remember, he was chosen after only when the three above him who had said no. It was Sharad Pawar who declined. Then came the name of Gopal Krishna Gandhi. He declined, and then it was also proposed that NC patron Farooq Abdullah could contest. He declined as well. So a former BJP leader versus NDA candidate is how the numbers are placed. His electoral calculation is that he would get somewhere around 38.42%. Droupadi Murmu getting the similar vote as was won by Ramnath Kovind in 2017. Let's bring in the reporters tracking the story very, very closely. We have Arun Dhata tracking the story. Also on this broadcast is Anshul. I'm coming to you, Arun, first. One may say this is a no contest, but for the opposition, they must also put up a fight, and that's what they have done. But that letter, interestingly, Arun, that was sent by Yashwant Sinha to his party colleagues also in the BJP saying, I'm a former BJP leader, vote for me. Arun. Arun, if you can hear me.
Well, Maria, yes. I just missed the last bit of your question, but of course, yes, opposition candidate will have to put up a fight, and perhaps that was the part of the strategy of the opposition and Yashwant Sinha when he wrote that letter to not only to the opposition parties but also to the BJP MPs, trying to ignite his relationship with the Bharatiya Janata Party. He was also talking about the party of L.K. Advani and Atal Bihari Vajpayee. All these things he mentioned in that letter. But the fact here is that it seems that there is not going to be any problem for Droupadi Murmu as far as the presidential election is concerned. But what is going to be the ultimate result, that's something which we'll know once the results are out. One thing is sure, that the whip doesn't work in these elections, and therefore the chances of cross voting will be high. So once the results will be out, we'll get to know the exact percentage of voting in favor of Droupadi Murmu and in Yashwant Sinha. Parties like BJD, YSR, Congress, Shiv Sena, JMM, have come forward, agreed to give their support to the candidate, to the candidature of Droupadi Murmu of NDA, because they know that they will also have to cater to their audience, especially JMM. It was very much certain when BJP had played that master stroke that JMM will back Droupadi Murmu's candidature. Both of them, Droupadi Murmu and Hemant Soren, share very good bonding with each other, and also both come from the same Senthil caste in tribal community. And also parties like BJD and YSR, Congress have been on the side of government during the important legislation. So that was also expected. But surprising was of the Shiv Sena and there are other smaller parties. That's something which we had not expected, because Shiv Sena has been blaming BJP for what happened in Maharashtra. But of course, they also had their compulsion. So as far as Droupadi Murmu's election is concerned, it is quite certain that she will sail through to the Rashtrapati Bhavan. But what is going to be the percentage of voting? That's something which is going to be very, very interesting.
Yes, and those are the visuals on your television screens coming from Parliament of India. This is the first floor where all the MPs will be going to cast their vote. So the stage is set, the carpet, the red carpet there for the MPs to go and cast their vote. Similar voting arrangements have been made in all legislative assemblies across the country. TMC MPs, for example, will be casting their vote in the Bengal Assembly. Number of regional parties have told their MPs to exercise their right in the respective state assemblies. So visuals coming in on the stage that is set for the presidential polls. In an hour from now, the first vote will be cast. We know the results, but nevertheless, it will be interesting to see those visuals come in from various states and Parliament of India. Anshul is joining us from outside Yashwant Sinha's residence. Anshul, Yashwant Sinha very much at home, because soon after he arrived, after he said that after he had campaigned in a number of states, he said that his party colleagues of the past should come out and vote for him as well. But Yashwant Sinha today stands for a completely different politics from what he stood before 2018 when he switched sides.
That's right, Maria. That is the reason why that the letter he sent out yesterday, or the statement that he released yesterday to the party colleagues, that could be seen as the last thrust that has been put out by Yashwant Sinha, just to make sure that he could garner a few more votes. Because remember, Yashwant Sinha in his statement has also said that this is not just an election of the president candidate, but this is an election of ideologies. And so yes, he has requested his former party members as well from the BJP and his former allies in the NDA as well to come out and actually support him in this elections, because he has gone ahead and said that the people who actually support Droupadi Murmu, or the party who has put out the name of Droupadi Murmu, actually attacks the democracy of the country, the very fabric of this country, day in and day out. Currently, Maria, I'd like to tell you that I'm standing outside Yashwant Sinha's house in the national capital, where he is still inside his house and waiting very keenly for the elections to start. And the next few minutes, we are going to see the elections start from all around the country. So yes, it remains to be seen if any impact is being made by Yashwant Sinha, by the letter that he tried to put out, by the emotional message that he tried to convey to the people, if that will have any impact. However, the numbers as of now, as Arun Dhanda and you have been rightly pointing out, are absolutely stacked up in the favor of Droupadi Murmu. It is going to be a very, very uphill task for the opposition to make sure that Yashwant Sinha actually garners votes anywhere close to what Droupadi Murmu is going to get. However, if you see at the opposition strategy in this whole scenario, the opposition was not able to even garner the opposition votes in and around the country as well. We saw JMM parting ways, also Shiv Sena parting ways. So yes, the message that the opposition wanted to give out from day one, that the opposition is united, because remember, when there were discussions about the president's candidate, we heard senior members of the opposition, be it Sharad Pawar or Mamta Banerjee, that this candidature is not just for the election, but also this candidature is just to give out a message that the opposition stands strong in the country, and the message that they wanted to give out, that yes, the opposition will continue its fight against the government. However, it seems that the opposition has failed in that as well, because many of the allies who were part of the opposition have now parted ways from them in this, when it comes to the whole election scenario. So yes, it remains to be seen as on 21st of July, when the results come out, how much of that effect will that finally have, as the statement made by Yashwant Sinha, how much effect will that finally have on the people and his party members or his former colleagues who have previously worked from him, and now
yes,
it remains to be seen if they actually think that Yashwant Sinha is going to be the right candidate for the presidential post. But yes, that is still a very uphill task. Now it remains to be seen what
yes,
actually transpires on the 21st of July, Maria.
All right, Anshul and Arun, thank you so much for joining us. Let's take a look at how the president is elected. What is the process? What is an electoral college? This is based on value-based system, and that has to do with the strength of a state, in the sense that what is the population of a particular state. As far as the MPs are concerned, the value of vote of every MP of Parliament is 708. So the MP's vote stands for one MP is for 708 votes, and value of MLAs, that is the vote that is based, as I said, on the state's population. So for example, value of one MLA in the state of Uttar Pradesh will be much higher than a value of one MLA in the state or half state such as Delhi. Higher the state's population, higher the vote value, and hence the number of votes that is the basis of an electoral college. It has nothing to do as much as the vote per se, or the number of MLAs at the number of MPs. So it's an election based on an electoral college. This is how it plays out. Let me get the guests this morning. Charu Pragya, spokesperson of the BJP, Varun Singh, political analyst, Hemant Atri is senior journalist. I'm going to begin with you, Varun Singh. Varun Singh, let's be clear, Droupadi Murmu is an epic choice, and those who are opposing her will be seen on wrong side of the history today.
Absolutely, and most of the opposition parties have already realized that they cannot be seen on the wrong side. For example, JMM is one of them, and BJD already had said it also exposes the opposition's big farce of the opposition unity, which we also saw yesterday when Sharad Pawar came out to announce the name of Margaret Alva, and of all people, he couldn't contact Mamata Banerjee, who was leading the opposition at one point of time. So, Droupadi Murmu, her name, her candidature herself is I hate to use this word because it is overused, but is a masterstroke and by the BJP. And I am sure with the number of votes in her favor, she will come, or she will get more than what we saw in the previous election, because as someone is pointing out, Shiv Sena's compulsion is, if it wants to stay strong, if it even wants to retain Shiv Sena over here in Maharashtra, Uddhav Thackeray had no option to vote except for Droupadi Murmu, and we have many other parties that are coming in her favor. So it's just an election. We will wait for a few days till the time the results are announced, because it's a lengthy process, but it's sure and it's certain that she's winning,
with
and those opposing her.
Conclusion. But what you said, Varun, it's interesting that Mamata Banerjee was unreachable in that call that was made by Sharad Pawar to Mamata Banerjee. Is that an indication of what could play out during the vice presidential elections? Let's not forget that the vice president who has been chosen by the NDA is a former governor of Bengal as well. Hemant Atri, the numbers are stacked in favor of Droupadi Murmu. But the big message in that selection of Droupadi Murmu, the first tribal precedent, yes, but also the message that this is about mainstreaming of all those who were largely seen as sidelined, or those who were not part of the mainstream, the marginalized.
See, Maria, NDA and particularly BJP these days, they are basically working on a fact-based, on a particular community and caste-based approach. From day one, for last 6 months, as you know, Mr. Modi, you can't predict him. But in this particular case, particularly about Droupadi Murmu, her name was in air for last, say, about 6 months. Yeah. It is never there in any case as far as Modi and Amit Shah's politics is concerned. But this time around, they were certain that they have to play a big game as far as opposition is concerned. Once, if you go back 1.5 months back, 45 days back, what was there? BJP and its allies, they were only having 49% of the votes. Today, they are having 62% plus votes. And there is a speculation that it might cross Mr. Ramnath Kovind's score of 65%. The reason herein is they have particularly addressed a community that is a tribal community which is spread across 13 states. And their population is not less in many states. So the BJP has gone the way it should have gone. But look about I just feel about the pity on the opposition side. What was Congress party doing? Being single largest party, they were not seeming keen in any of the stages during this election.
Yes. So 10.3 crore tribal population is being reached out through this candidature of Droupadi Murmu, clearly keeping in mind the electoral calculations as well. Before I bring in Charu Pragya, let me go straight to Pallavi Ghosh, who's joining me from outside Parliament of India. Pallavi, if 2017 was about a Dalit president, this is about a tribal president that India will get, but also about the second woman president. You know, that reach out to the women as a constituency also becomes crucial, Pallavi, because we have seen how Prime Minister Modi's policies have been very women-centric. It's about that very, you know, multiple of these policies, be it the Ujjwala Yojana or the toilet scheme, has been about women as well.
That's right, and in fact, that is where the government and the BJP particularly would want to put a dent into a narrative which is often pushed by the opposition, that they are the ones who feel for the backwards, those who haven't got the credit that they deserve, whether it's tribals, whether it's women. Ironically, that's the same pressure which I think the Mamata Banerjee factor also came under, which is why she said a few days back, if only I had been told that it would have been Droupadi Murmu, then perhaps we would have discussed or thought about it. She remains the only woman chief minister in the country. The yardstick of Trinamool Congress, if you notice during the Bengal elections, was essentially about that woman, one single lone woman taking on so many of the men. So having said that, having been their electoral calling card, it would have become very difficult, and it does become very difficult for the Trinamool Congress to explain that despite the fact that they are in the opposition spectrum and Yashwant Sinha happens to be a former TMC leader, why is it that at least on this woman issue they did not change their stand and end up supporting Droupadi Murmu? But in politics, things are not all that simple. Beyond that, I don't think she would want to show that she's siding with anything which has been proposed by the BJP, and therefore in that context it would be interesting to see what really is the stand of the Trinamool Congress on 21st, when they're going to be having that big meeting after the Martyrdom Day event is over. Remember, they were not there at the meeting along with the Aam Aadmi Party at Mr. Parwar's residence. Of course, the clarification, to be fair to them, it was also that they were preparing for the 21st event. They are going to be voting in Kolkata today for Yashwant Sinha. But having said that, that certainly is going to be interesting to watch out is on which side they lean as far as the vice presidential choice is concerned. But remember, there's also a woman factor over there. Margaret Alva is the opposition's choice.
Yes. Pallavi, stay with us, because the first tweet coming in from the BJP right now, before the polling is to begin, BJP President JP Nadda has now tweeted, and he says, Murmu's candidacy for the highest office is a defining moment for India and the most glorious moment in our quest for social justice and transformation. JP Nadda has called this election People's President Selection election and has written a short note on Murmu's candidacy as well. This is an article that is published now. That's an editorial that he has penned. Pallavi Ghosh continues to be with us. A people's candidate is how JP Nadda is calling Murmu's candidacy.
You know, and that's why I guess many in the opposition spectrum did understand the power of the nomination of Droupadi Murmu. First of all, a tribal, not entitled, someone who's risen from the ranks, someone who's of course a woman. These are the factors which actually give a value addition to her candidature. And the BJP would constantly want to remind that those who are occupying Rashtrapati Bhavan or even the Vice President's chair are people who are actually connected with the people. Pretty much similar words which are used by Mr. Nadda for Jagdeep Dhankar as well, calling him a Kisan Putra, a people's governor. You know, in Bengal, again quickly, Jagdeep Dhankar would always project himself as that voice in the governor's house or Raj Bhavan who would actually raise the voice of the people of Bengal when poll violence was taking place. Well, we are talking about the presidential elections today, but certainly that's a strong pitch for the presidential nominee, which is Droupadi Murmu, and as someone who is not entitled, who's risen from the ranks, and therefore everyone should actually vote for her, forgetting their political lineage, political alienations, and therefore she's just going to add on to the weight of Rashtrapati Bhavan.
So a defining moment is what Mr. Nada is saying. Pallavi Ghosh, really appreciate your time. Let me bring in Charu Pragya. Charu, did the BJP expect more support, more breaking of ranks, and that did not really happen? You would have certainly wanted Mamata Banerjee to also support, the first tribal president of India, and also the fact that Mamata Banerjee has always projected herself as a woman leader, a woman chief minister who's taking on the might of the BJP.
Maria, what is projected and what is the truth is usually entirely different. And this is one more instance where the myth of the opposition unity has been busted and the myth of Mamta Didi, as usual, also has been busted. That being said, I'm very excited about today. I'm really looking forward to see how this election unfolds, because I believe a larger section than what we are expecting to be voting for Murmuji will end up voting for her. We already know a big chunk of the opposition has put their support behind her, and isn't that incredible? And that's the beauty of our democracy. We can look beyond ideologies and party lines when we can unite over a cause which all of us are working for, and I'm happy about that, and I'm waiting to see how that goes on.
Let's see how it plays out today. Will there be more surprises as the day unfolds? 10 a.m. is when the polling actually begins. So let's take a look at how many parties and which are these political parties and which are supporting Droupadi Murmu. BJD came out in support of Droupadi Murmu. She is, of course, from Odisha. YSRCP, another friendly party of the BJP. We have seen them backing the BJP on the floor of the House. Wasn't really a surprise. Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, she has worked as the governor of Jharkhand, completed full term as the governor of Jharkhand, stood with the government on a number of legislations as well. So it came as a surprise. So Jharkhand Mukti Morcha Chief Shiv Sena and also Hemant Soren backing Droupadi Murmu. Shiv Sena was a surprise because it was Uddhav Thackeray's MPs and MLAs who forced him to back Droupadi Murmu. JDU, not much of a surprise as they are part of the NDA. Again, other allies, AIADMK and LJP, all of them backing Droupadi Murmu. Look at more support that has come in from for Droupadi Murmu. Those two are parties which are in alliance with in UP. Not much of a surprise. BSP again, Mayawati supporting the woman factor here. That is, she is the second woman president of India. TDP breaking ranks from the opposition side. In fact, also backing and supporting and campaigning for Droupadi Murmu in Andhra Pradesh. Shiromani Akali Dal backing her candidature. Other political parties also coming in. This was a surprise certainly as far as UP is concerned. On the other hand, all these political parties from the Congress to the NCP, Trinamool Congress, Mamata Banerjee, though saying that had her name been announced much before they backed Yashwant Sinha or proposed his name, perhaps she would have stood with the name of Droupadi Murmu. CPIM, Samajwadi Party, the RJD in Bihar, RLD in UP, all of them backing Yashwant Sinha. More political parties. TRS, of course, has domestic considerations, certainly because they are fighting against the BJP in the state of Telangana as well. So they are backing Yashwant Sinha. Agni Path announcing the support for Yashwant Sinha only 24 hours ago. National Conference patron himself declining to contest, but then backing Yashwant Sinha. Now MIM and other political parties all backing Yashwant Sinha. But this name, again, as far as all these political parties in opposition are concerned, they do not have the electoral weight. They do not have enough MPs and MLAs to ensure Yashwant Sinha goes to the Raisina Hills. Let me go back to the guests that we have on this special broadcast. Varun, we are looking at various political parties that are backing, but let's look at this breaking of ranks that have happened. You know, the index of opposition unity again stands at an all-time low. But which one is a surprise for you? I won't say JMM is much of a surprise. Would you say Shiv Sena is a surprise factor here?
You know, almost 15 days ago, if you had asked me this question, I would have said, yeah, Shiv Sena is a surprise. But knowing Shiv Sena and how the patriarch Bala Saheb Thackeray had behaved in the past, where he has actually not voted for NDA, it doesn't come to me as a surprise. And especially seeing the current scenario, it was clear from 21st of June that Shiv Sena, the MPs and MLAs wouldn't like to vote for the candidature of Mr. Yashwant Sinha, because there was a big turmoil that was going on, and most of the MPs do want to. I know here, let me tell you, the Shiv Sena MP from Palghar, who has now shifted to Shinde, that is a tribal belt. There are many tribal belts over here in Maharashtra also, from where Shiv Sena has its MP when they fought together with the BJP. So these people never would want to be seen as opposing a tribal candidate. I don't see Shiv Sena as a party that came as a surprise. However, I have a small objection to what Mr. RJD's new chief said. And what surprises me is the lack of consideration from the men, especially towards a woman candidate. And look at him. He's being targeted. He can be targeted for numerous things. He can't even pronounce Loktantra, but he's again being targeted via his mother, that his mother was a rubber stamp, which is absolutely wrong. I do not understand the mentality of especially men in this country, where they want to target another man but cannot target him directly. They always want to use a woman as a shield. And by the BJP, by putting this woman, Murmu, who has risen to rank, who has proven everything, it is a clear message that the party has changed, but these smaller parties and their leaders need to evolve, which is the need of the hour.
That's right. And Hemant Attri, the fact is that Droupadi Murmu chose BJP and was a member of the BJP in a state where the BJP has no foothold, in Odisha. And she became a part of the Biju Janata Dal government and the NDA government, which was Biju Janata Dal and BJP government, at a time when the BJP was almost like an unknown factor in the state.
See, Maria, precisely that is the point. See, BJP is targeting particular areas where they are lacking as far as foothold is concerned. By electing Mrs. Murmu, what they have done is they have focused Odisha as a state which has been a challenge for them in East. All rest of the states they have already won.
Yes.
Now, in that particular area, Narendra Modi is, he could have played this election in a different way, Maria, if you allow me. See, if there was a first tribal woman to be elected, what high moral ground could BJP have taken? They would have taken all parties into confidence and they would have named her and she could have been elected unopposed. But Mr. Narendra Modi is planning for 2024. He wanted to show the opposition their place. And opposition was more keen on seeing where they lack today. The thing is, Mr. Narendra Modi had this thing in his mind already, that he will be playing a master stroke with Mrs. Murmu. Now see the bankruptcy of the opposition parties. Once they named Mr. Yashwant Sinha on that day, there were 16 of them who had proposed him. Today there are only 14 of them. And today, mark my words, there will be a lot of cross-voting for the very simple reason that there are many parties and many individuals who just don't want to be seen against a tribal women candidate. Though the Congress party has failed miserably on this account before 2024, it was the only one thing, president and vice president election, wherein they could have shown their might. They had a slight edge. They had 51% of votes, which were non-BJP votes. But see what have happened. They have lost 95% votes, 95,000 votes in last 15 days. And BJP has gained 1,20,000 votes.
Yes.
How it
so,
has
Hemant Attri, the point that you made particularly to do with Odisha becomes important here. And also the BJP looking at catchment areas, understanding fully well that the states that go to polls in the next 1.5 years, that is Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, all these states have a significant ST seats. Those are seats that are reserved for scheduled tribes. And the BJP did not do well in 2017. They're hoping to have those electoral gains after sending this message of the first tribal president. Thank you so much for joining us, Varun, Hemant Attri and Charu Pragya. Let's take a look at the life of Droupadi Murmu. One full of challenges and also several struggles and sacrifices. From the day the NDA picked her as the presidential nominee, Droupadi Murmu was the president in waiting.
श्रीमती द्रौपदी मुर्मू, इनको राष्ट्रपति का प्रत्याशी घोषित किया गया है एनडीए की तरफ से।
An announcement that did not come as much of a surprise as in 2017 too, her name had figured in the NDA's shortlist for India's top constitutional office. Ramnath Kovind had then emerged as the dark horse. With the numbers stacked overwhelmingly in the favor of the NDA, her election is high on symbolism and less about the numbers game. An election which is witnessing the changing political axis. A selection that has placed the opposition camp in a quandary. Uddhav Thackeray, forced by the Shiv Sena MPs, broke ranks from allies in Mahavikas Aghadi to back her. TDP's Chandrababu Naidu came out to even campaign for her in Andhra Pradesh. Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, India's only tribal party, had to support as well. After all, she had served as the governor of Jharkhand.
मेरे जो फैमिली बहुत गरीबी है, गरीबी थोड़ा मैं फाइनेंस सियाली उनको सपोर्ट करूं, इसीलिए थोड़ा पढ़ लिख के ऐसा बन जाऊं कि मुझे थोड़ा नौकरी मिल जाए, लेकिन मुझे पॉलिटिक्स में जाना, ये गवर्नर बनना, ये मैं कभी सोची नहीं थी।
64-year-old Droupadi Murmu, low profile and soft-spoken, has generally steered clear of controversy. She was also the only governor to complete a full term in office in Jharkhand, which has had 10 governments in its 2 decades of existence.
जो सेंट्रल ने हम मेरा बहन का नाम लिया ना, हम लोग बहुत खुश में, रायरंगपुर के बासिंदा सब खुश में है। आदिवासी महिला की पहले जो चुना गया ना, वही सबसे खुशी बात है।
पूरा रायरंगपुर के साथ ही उनका बहुत अच्छा संपर्क रहा है, सबका उन्होंने हमेशा साथ और सहयोग दिया और बहुत ही प्यार भरा संपर्क रहा है उनका सबों के साथ में। हमारे किसी भी प्रोग्राम में वो हमेशा आगे रहते थे और सबकी बातें सुनते थे।
तो काउंसिलर से होके विधायक भी बन गए, विधायक बन के वो बेस्ट अवार्ड भी उनको मिला है, नीलकंठ पुरस्कार मिला है उनको। उसके बाद वो मंत्री भी बने, सबका साथ मिल के काम करते हैं।
Born into a Santhali farmer's home in Uper village of Mayurbhanj district, Murmu persisted with her studies even though she had to leave her village after class 7 in order to do so. With the help of relatives, she completed her schooling in Bhubaneswar and then joined Ramadevi Women's College. After her studies, Murmu got a job with the Odisha's Irrigation and Power Department. She, however, quit the job after she got married to Shyam Charan Murmu, a bank employee, and moved to Rairangpur, a town about 20 kilometers from her native village. She started teaching at the Sri Aurobindo Integral Education and Research Center in Rairangpur. It was here that her work with a Santhal organization, where she had enrolled in the 1990s, caught the attention of the BJP's Raj Kishore Das. Back then, it was a party that did not have much political influence in the state. Seeing potential in Murmu, he asked her to contest for councillor in the Rairangpur Notified Area Council. In 1997, she became councillor and later vice chairperson of the Rairangpur Corporation.
2000 में 97 5 साल का ये तो आप जानते हैं टर्म होता है, लेकिन बीच में मुझे जब जनरल इलेक्शन आ गया, मुझे 2000 में टिकट दिया गया। उन्होंने कहा आपको तो लड़ना है, मैंने बोला मेरे बच्चे छोटे छोटे हैं, मुझे ये तो काउंसिलर में थी, वाइस चेयरमैन थी, तो टाउन के अंदर मुझे घूमना पड़ता था, फिर अभी तो मुझे पूरा क्षेत्र में घूमना पड़ेगा, तो टाइम नहीं दे पाऊंगी। फिर मुझे थोड़ा, मैंने बोला ठीक है चलिए, बच्चे भी बोले ठीक है माँ, तुम लड़ना चाहती हो तो लड़ो।
She served twice as a BJP MLA in Odisha and also worked as a minister in the Naveen Patnaik government from the 2002 to 2004, when the BJP and Biju Janata Dal ran a coalition government. She was awarded the Neelkant Award for the Best Legislator by the Odisha Legislative Assembly. Droupadi Murmu's candidature signifies the BJP's efforts to bring the tribal and other marginalized communities to the mainstream. A convincing example of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. It's an outreach to the strong 10.42 crore scheduled tribes population of India, who are largely in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Jharkhand and Maharashtra and other states in Northeast. The BJP hopes the message of the first tribal woman president of India will help them expand their footprints in tribal belts across the country and earn immediate electoral dividend in the upcoming polls. The move comes ahead of assembly elections in Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh. The four states have 128 seats reserved for scheduled tribes, of which the BJP had won just 35 in the last assembly elections. The BJP is also hoping that her candidature will strengthen its political hold in Odisha and get a foothold in Jharkhand, where it lost the elections in 2019.
आज भी हम कहते हैं कि आदिवासियों में ओडिशा में संथाल प्रोग्रेसिव है, लेकिन इतना भी प्रोग्रेसिव नहीं है कि वो दूसरों के साथ कॉम्पीट कर पाए। इसीलिए और भी थोड़ा अभी भी फाउंडेशन स्टेज में है। आगे जाने के लिए महिला को और पुरुष को दोनों को आगे आना होगा, जैसे परिवार चलाने के लिए दोनों की आवश्यकता है।
If 2017 was about a Dalit president, 2022 is about the first tribal president and a second woman president of India. The choice of a woman is again a message by the Modi government that women remain the centerpiece of its policy. 21st July will see history unfold, and most politicians won't want to be on the wrong side of it. In New Delhi, this is Maria Shakil. A piece of breaking news coming in now.
करते हैं सर, ये बताइए आज मॉनसून सत्र शुरू हो रहा है, सरकार ने कुछ एम तो बनाया होगा कुछ सार्थक बनाने के लिए?
हमने तो रिक्वेस्ट किया है, बातचीत भी किया है, कल भी बातचीत किया है, आज भी करेंगे, परसों भी करेंगे। हमारा सोच और दिशा निर्देश माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का हमको इतना ही है, सुचारू रूप से चलन करे, चर्चा हो, सार्थक चर्चा हो और सबके हित में लिए जो है वो चर्चा हो। ये हमारा इच्छा है, हमारा प्रधानमंत्री जी का इच्छा है, हमारा सरकार का इच्छा है, मनसा है। इसलिए मैं सबसे विनती करता हूँ सुचारू रूप से चलाने के लिए आप कृपया।
कुल कितने विधेयक लाए जाएंगे इस सत्र में?
अभी तो हमारा टोटल 32 है, वो 32 में अभी 14 तैयार है। कितना लाना है कितना नहीं लाना है वो तो हम निर्णय करेंगे। हम तो इंडिकेशन किया है, अब तैयारी करें, सब लोगों को पहले ही इन्फॉर्मेशन रहे, कम से कम नेताओं को, इसलिए हमने किया है।
राष्ट्रपति चुनाव है,
राष्ट्रपति चुनाव हम रिकॉर्ड मार्जिन से जीत जाएंगे।
तो ये थे प्रहलाद जोशी जी, और इनका यही कहना है कि संसद सत्र शुरू हो रहा है, सार्थकता बनाने के लिए सारे प्रयास किए जाएंगे। अमित पांडे, दिल्ली न्यूज़ 18 इंडिया।
Parliamentary Affairs Minister there, Prahlad Joshi, saying that hum record margin se jeetenge presidential polls, and his confidence is not misplaced, because as of now the numbers are that Droupadi Murmu could win somewhere nearly almost like 70% of the total electoral college. We are slipping into a short break. This remains our top focus here on CNN News 18.
CNN News 18 is New India's #1 news choice. Trounces, Times Now and Republic TV.
विजू चाचा, गांव जा रहे हैं क्या?
अरे नहीं बेटा,
हम लोग तो ट्रिप पर जा रहे हैं।
ट्रिप पे? पिछले महीने तो रिटायर हुए आप, तो ये खर्चा?
रिटायरमेंट के बाद मैं अपनी लाइफ आराम से जी सकूं, इसकी प्लानिंग मैंने पहले ही कर ली थी।
वो कैसे?
मैंने एनपीएस में रेगुलर इन्वेस्ट किया और अब ये इन्वेस्टमेंट ग्रो होकर पेंशन का लाभ दे रही है।
अच्छा।
हाँ अरुण, तुम भी एनपीएस में इन्वेस्ट करना शुरू करो।
हाँ, मैं आज ही एनपीएस अकाउंट ओपन करता हूँ।
पेंशन है तो टेंशन नहीं। एनपीएस इन्वेस्टमेंट्स आर सब्जेक्ट टू मार्केट रिस्क।
कभी आपने सोचा है फोन बिल, बिजली का बिल, ईएमआई हर महीने पर आपके
गर्मी कम हो रही है और पता नहीं अंदर भी गर्मी कम होगी कि नहीं होगी। ये कालखंड एक प्रकार से बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। ये आजादी के अमृत महोत्सव का कालखंड है। 15 अगस्त का विशेष महत्व है और आने वाले 25 साल के लिए देश जब शताब्दी मनाएगा तो हमारी 25 साल की यात्रा कैसी रहे, हम कितनी तेज गति से चले, कितनी नई ऊंचाइयों को पार करें, इसके संकल्प लेने का एक कालखंड है। और उन संकल्पों के प्रति समर्पित होकर के देश को दिशा देना, सदन देश का नेतृत्व करे, सदन के सभी माननीय सदस्य राष्ट्र में नई ऊर्जा भरने के लिए निमित्त बने, उस अर्थ में ये सत्र भी बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। ये सत्र इसलिए भी महत्वपूर्ण है कि इसी समय राष्ट्रपति पद और उपराष्ट्रपति पद के चुनाव हो रहे हैं। आज मतदान भी हो रहा है और इसी कालखंड में देश को नए राष्ट्रपति, नए उपराष्ट्रपति, उनका मार्गदर्शन प्रारंभ होगा। हम हमेशा सदन को संवाद का एक सक्षम माध्यम मानते हैं, तीर्थ क्षेत्र मानते हैं, जहां खुले मन से संवाद हो, जरूरत पड़े तो वाद विवाद हो, आलोचना भी हो, बहुत उत्तम प्रकार का एनालिसिस करके चीजों का बारीकियों से विश्लेषण हो, ताकि नीति और निर्णयों में बहुत ही सकारात्मक योगदान हो सके। मैं सभी आदरणीय सांसदों से यही आग्रह करूंगा कि गहन चिंतन, गहन चर्चा, उत्तम चर्चा और सदन को हम जितना ज्यादा प्रोडक्टिव बना सके, सदन को जितना ज्यादा फ्रूटफुल बना सके, उसलिए सबका सहयोग हो और सबके प्रयास से ही लोकतंत्र चलता है, सबके प्रयास से ही सदन चलता है, सबके प्रयास से ही सदन उत्तम निर्णय करता है। और इसलिए सदन की गरिमा बढ़ाने के लिए भी हम सब अपने कर्तव्यों का निर्वाह करते हुए इस सत्र का राष्ट्रहित में सर्वाधिक उपयोग करें और हर पल याद रखें कि आजादी के लिए जिन्होंने अपनी जवानी खपा दी, अपना जीवन खपा दिया, जिंदगी जेलों में काटी, कुछ ने शहादत स्वीकार की। उनके सपनों को ध्यान में रखते हुए और जब 15 अगस्त सामने है तब सदन का सर्वाधिक सकारात्मक उपयोग हो, यही मेरी सबसे प्रार्थना है। आप सबका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Prime Minister Modi there speaking in Parliament House just before the monsoon session of Parliament is to begin at 11 a.m. and he has told the opposition, let's discuss and debate every issue and it remains to be seen whether the heat inside is less than and reflecting perhaps the temperature going down outside as well. So Pallavi, want Parliament to be a place of discussion and debate. That is the message that is coming from the Prime Minister. Let the monsoon session be productive.
Yes, and in fact, he also talked in the context of the Independence Day of 15 August, saying that those dreams, the fights and aspirations of those who fought for the freedom of our country, they should be remembered all the more, so that whatever debate, discussions, analysis, he said even it's a place for criticism, all of it must be done in a fruitful manner so that it reflects on our policies, on the decisions of the government, and whatever decision really comes out of Parliament. Look, this is a normal routine appeal which is often made by the Prime Minister every time any session begins. We also know when the session actually goes full on, this appeal often is used on deaf ears, so to say, because the opposition parties also feel that they have every right, and rightfully so, to raise their voice, to make issues about what they feel strongly about. In fact, even as we speak, multiple notices for discussion of the Agni Path scheme have been given. And what the Prime Minister stressed on is that don't have rancor, don't have bitterness. What you really need to do is that all of you need to get together, fight together, and also ensure that the House runs. And this session, he also said, is particularly important because the election of the President and the Vice President is taking place.
Yes, and in the next few minutes, we'll be getting the first visuals of the Prime Minister going to cast his vote for the presidential polls. And then there will be a core committee meeting of the BJP where top ministers will be meeting the Prime Minister to discuss the floor strategy. And on the opposition side, there will be another meeting to discuss the opposition strategy. But Pallavi, you know, usually the soundbite that we are seeing, customary as it may, usually takes place around 10:15, 10:30 before the session begins. It's happened right now, so we can get those visuals perhaps of the Prime Minister going to exercise his vote for the presidential elections.
Yes, and I think he would also want to be one of the first ones to cast their vote, and voting begins at around 10 a.m., which means just another 15 minutes of time. So the Prime Minister, who was flanked by the Parliamentary Affairs Minister, has walked away. He's gone to his office, and after that, we expect him to go up. And we've been seeing those pictures. Preparations are on. 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. is the time really when those elections take place. So the choice is very simple for those who have not got to see the election procedure. You know, you have any member of Parliament, MLAs, of course, do have the right to exercise their vote, both inside Parliament and also in the respective state assemblies. In some cases, that's what's happening. In Bengal, for example, I can say it's happening in the MPs have decided to vote in the Bengal assembly. So, you know, voting also will become a way of scoring their political points.
Yes.
And I think the Prime Minister stressed on the fact is that we also must remember that today is an important day because we are voting for the President. But today is also an important day because the monsoon session begins with a plethora of agenda. And it's important that the opposition and the government see eye to eye on many of these policy matters.
Yes, and those are the visuals of Prime Minister's cavalcade, in fact, entering the Parliament House. That's minutes before he came and he gave that sound bite in which he reached out to the opposition, saying that there's need for dialogue and discussion. Let there be a healthy monsoon session, not rancor, no bitterness between Treasury benches and opposition. Today, a number of suspension motion that has been given by opposition, notices of suspending discussion in the House has been given to do with the Agni Path scheme. And Pallavi, talking specifically about the Agni Path scheme, a number of political parties want discussion on it, but we are also seeing how the government would certainly quote the number of applications, Arundhata, that the government, be it the Indian Air Force or the Indian Army or the Indian Navy has received ever since the application process began.
Well, see, Maria, clarification has come from all the ranks from in the government, on the Agni Path scheme. And in fact, when that all-party meeting happened yesterday, opposition parties raised around 17 issues, and of course including Agni Path, on which they wanted discussion in the parliament. And in fact, yesterday Prahlad Joshi had also said that they are ready to discuss those issues if chair allows in the parliament. In fact, Prime Minister Modi also reiterating the stand that they are very much in favor of a civilized and a fruitful debate in the parliament, and that's something for which people have sent these MPs to the parliament to make legislations for the welfare of the people. And Prime Minister Modi in fact talking on those lines, that how important parliament is and what is the role of parliament, and we all have to understand the role of the parliament, and therefore the fruitful discussion is very, very important. Opposition parties have made it very clear that they will not let go any opportunities in the parliament to discuss those issues which they have spoken about, the inflation, Agni Path scheme, and also various other issues. So we must expect fiery session as it begins today, and Prime Minister's the initial speech, which always happens before the Parliament commences. So we'll have to see as to how things go inside the Parliament. But of course, Prime Minister Modi setting the tone for the Parliament session.
All right, Arun, thank you so much for joining us. We are slipping into a short break. After that, we will be going back to our top story, that is the presidential polls. And Prime Minister casting his vote at 10 a.m. Those first shots will be coming in from the Parliament of India, Chief Ministers of various states and MPs of regional parties casting their votes in those state assemblies. All those visuals will start coming in from 10 a.m. So stay with us.
कभी आपने सोचा है फोन बिल, बिजली का बिल, EMI हर महीने, पर आपके सेविंग्स अकाउंट में इंटरेस्ट 3 महीने में एक बार। लेकिन अब कोई है जो सेविंग्स अकाउंट में इंटरेस्ट दे रहा है 3 महीने में नहीं, बल्कि हर महीने। IDFC फर्स्ट बैंक, यही तो है इनकी ऑलवेज यू फर्स्ट वाली सोच। IDFC फर्स्ट बैंक, ऑलवेज यू फर्स्ट।
What's the best tablet for me to explore digital painting? Also video call my kids?
Ask the experts at Chroma. Back to school new season.
The Meridian, where contrasts come together and sophistication runs wild. Presenting a Jeep SUV that gives you the best of both worlds. The all-new Jeep Meridian, untamed sophistication.
म्यूचुअल फंड्स में बैटिंग की तरह टाइमिंग इंपॉर्टेंट है।
गलत। बैटिंग के लिए टाइमिंग सही है। म्यूचुअल फंड्स के लिए टाइम स्पेंड इन मार्केट बिल्कुल सही है। मतलब जितना टाइम मार्केट में स्पेंड करेगा, फायदा होने का चांस उतना ही बढ़ेगा।
एकदम सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
आपने बिना कारण किचन का सारा सामान बदला क्यों?
प्यार योर ऑनर, और मैं सबूत दे सकता हूँ कि मैंने पुराने के बदले कुछ बेहतर लिया।
सबूत पेश करो।
अगर आसानी से साफ होने वाला गैस स्टव, आटा भी गूंथने वाला मिक्सर ग्राइंडर, स्पिलेज कंट्रोल वाला स्वच्छ प्रेशर कुकर, 5 लेयर कोटिंग वाला टिकाऊ कुकवेयर, कुकर की सीटी गिनने वाला इंडक्शन कुकटॉप भी एक्सचेंज में मिल जाए तो
एक्सचेंज में?
जी हाँ, बेहतरीन डिस्काउंट वाला प्रेस्टीज का एनीथिंग फॉर एनीथिंग एक्सचेंज फेस्टिवल।
जो बीवी से करे प्यार, वो प्रेस्टीज से कैसे करे इनकार?
रुको मैं देखता हूँ। अलेक्सा टर्न ऑन द लाइट।
Okay.
आ रहा
Alexa, play. बेबी को बेस पसंद है।
बेबी को बेस पसंद है।
Amazon Alexa, play music and more. Just ask.
Lawrence Bishnoi, operating from inside the Tihar jail with impunity, had no qualms ordering multiple hits on Salman Khan.
The sculptor
himself, the main man behind this, is saying that there is actually no difference.
Drugs to try and fund their terror operations and to also try and radicalize young, impressionable minds while confining them to the throes of drug addiction.
What is becoming increasingly worrying and problematic is that issues related to education is becoming so polarizing.
Now you can get a pre-approved personal loan in just 4 clicks with instant credit facility through YONO and without any branch visit. SMS to check eligibility today.
Helps beat sensitivity fast. Sensodyne Rapid Relief.
Narayana's spectacular performance in JEE Mains.
My name is Aniket Chattopadhyay. I have joined Narayana in class 9. I have secured 100 percentile in JEE Mains 2022.
My name is B. Haren Satvik. I have studied in Narayana since 6th class. JEE Mains 2022. I have secured 100 percentile.
My name is Rupesh Biani. I have joined Narayana in 6th class. I have scored 100 percentile in JEE Mains 2022.
I am Dheeraj Kurukunda. I have been studying in Narayana Group of Institutions since 8th standard. I want to thank Narayana.
Admissions are in progress.
OLX ऑटोज ही देता है आपकी कार का बेस्ट प्राइस।
क्या बात कर रहे हो? यही कि OLX ऑटोज ही देता है आपकी कार का बेस्ट प्राइस। ये प्राइस नहीं, सरप्राइज है। विजिट olxautos.in.
Brought to you by IDFC First Bank. Always you first.
कौन बनेगा राष्ट्रपति? Well, it's almost decided because it's a no contest to the Rashtrapati Bhavan as the stage is set for India's first tribal president. But for the contest, symbolic as it may, it's NDA's Droupadi Murmu versus the opposition's Yashwant Sinha. The Electoral College, comprising of MPs and state MLAs, will cast their votes between 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the Parliament House and state legislative assemblies to elect the 15th President of India. In another 2 minutes from now, the polling would begin. We'll get the first shots from the Parliament of India, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will cast his vote. Just minutes ago, he made a statement that democracy runs via everyone's efforts. In this candidacy of Droupadi Murmu, we have seen some interesting twists. New political axis has emerged, and we aren't really surprised about it. Soon after the BJP announced a tribal face as its candidate, several political parties who were otherwise standing with Yashwant Sinha decided to back her, lending their support instead. The counting of votes will be taking place on July 21st, and the country's next president will be sworn in on the 25th of July. Remember, current President Ramnath Kovind's 5-year tenure will end on the 24th of this month. So let me give you a sense of how the numbers are stacked, how and what is the number of votes that Droupadi Murmu is likely to poll. But before that, let's listen in from the Prime Minister.
राष्ट्रपति पद और उपराष्ट्रपति पद के चुनाव हो रहे हैं। आज मतदान भी हो रहा है और इसी कालखंड में देश को नए राष्ट्रपति, नए उपराष्ट्रपति, उनका मार्गदर्शन प्रारंभ होगा।
So let's take a look at the Electoral College and how the numbers are stacked much before the polling is to begin. Droupadi Murmu, NDA's candidate, is likely to win with a huge margin. As of now, without cross-voting being counted in, because she has gotten support from a number of political parties, a number of those who stood with Yashwant Sinha have decided to break ranks and back her. Her numbers stand at 61.58%. Yashwant Sinha is likely to poll somewhere around 38.42%. Droupadi Murmu has got support from a number of political parties of the opposition, which includes the Shiv Sena in Maharashtra, which includes the JMM in the state of Jharkhand, India's only tribal party. The support has also come in from the JDS and also a number of smaller political parties in Uttar Pradesh as well. As far as Yashwant Sinha is concerned, his backers are the TMC and the Aam Aadmi Party along with other UPA allies. So it's the breaking of ranks, emergence of a new political axis is what we are seeing just before another presidential polls. Big breaking coming in now. The voting for the presidential polls have begun. Voting will be held in the Parliament as well as the state assemblies across the country. Counting will be going, in fact, the polling will be going on till 5 p.m. and the stage is set for the Raisina Hills. The big question is, kaun banega Rashtrapati? Well, it's almost a foregone conclusion, but nevertheless, symbolic fight, an important fight, and we will be seeing what is the percentage of votes that will be polled by Droupadi Murmu. So the polling has begun, the voting has begun. It's 10 a.m. and that's what is happening right now. Let me bring in the reporters who are tracking this story. Pallavi Ghosh is joining us live. Arun Dhata. We also have Anshul and Mihir joining me from Bombay. Pallavi, I am going to begin with you. 10 a.m. is what we are seeing right now. The first set of visuals will be coming from the Parliament of India.
In fact, I'm coming to you right from inside Parliament, and because of, the paucity or rather the limitations, I'm just getting a sense of that area just right behind me, if you can see it. And, there has been a white cloth enclosure. That's where the MPs are going to go and cast their vote. The process, as we pointed out, is from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. There has been a flurry of activity, seriously, over here. We heard the Prime Minister a short while back saying that this is an important monsoon session because the presidential elections are going to take place, and, of course, later the vice presidential elections. I'm going to try and get a sense of the area just right behind me. You can see the Parliament precincts right behind me. That's where the MPs are walking up. That's where they're going to go and cast their vote. The Prime Minister, flanked by his members of Parliament, flanked, of course, by the Union Ministers, are going to be giving their vote right over here. Completely tight security, of course, inside Parliament, as always, but on a day like today. The MLAs, of course, vote for their state assemblies. Some MPs are also voting for their state assemblies, at least the Bengal MPs are doing. In terms of numbers, we've always been putting it out. It's not really much of a problem as far as Droupadi Murmu goes. Not just the NDA, but cutting across the party lines, cutting across to opposition parties, barring the AAP and TMC and the Congress party. All of them have decided to vote for Droupadi Murmu because of their own political compulsions, the tribal leader rising from the rank, and of course, she's a woman factor. But because I'm coming to you from inside Parliament, I'm going to try and get you those pictures right behind me. You can see some of the MPs lining up over there.
Pallavi, just 20 seconds. The first set of visuals are in fact coming from Chennai, where MK Stalin is there inside the assembly. He is come to cast his vote. DMK's M.K. Stalin, the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, present there to cast his vote. The first set of visuals are coming in from there, not really a surprise. We know which way his vote is going. But Pallavi, those visuals are coming in and you were pointing out on the first floor of the parliament, that's where the white enclosure is, Pallavi, and all MPs who are in parliament today or who are in Delhi will be going to cast their vote there, Pallavi. But when we look at these visuals, Pallavi, from Tamil Nadu, M.K. Stalin.
Well, I mean, no surprises there over there. You know, I think the presidential elections really, Maria, also stands out not just for the name, but also the kind of political changes or the semantics which we are going to take in the run-up to 2024. Look, there's no hard and fast rule as the one who's supporting you for the presidential elections will end up being on your side. But, you know, for example, I remember when Pratibha Patil was chosen as the UPA's presidential candidate, the Shiv Sena had broken rank. Shiv Sena at that point of time was with the NDA, but only on this count they had explained that, you know, because she comes from Maharashtra, there's just no way that we cannot vote for her.
But Pallavi, now we are seeing Prime Minister Narendra Modi along with BJP President JP Nadda, other party leaders now entering that room. That is the polling booth in Parliament where he is going to cast his vote. So perhaps the first one to exercise his right is in the parliament is the Prime Minister himself, who has entered the polling booth in Parliament where he has gone to cast his vote. Just minutes ago we heard from the Prime Minister where he said that this is an important day where the polling is happening across the country, the state assemblies and also the Parliament of India. The first set of visuals, that is the polling booth inside Parliament, where you will be seeing the polling agents sit there and to ensure that everything is in order. First set of visuals will be coming in of the Prime Minister. But Pallavi, we are seeing those visuals. That's interesting. Republic of India, that is the polling booth perhaps, which shows which room number is this, Pallavi? We are looking at those visuals of inside Parliament.
Well, that's room number 63. I mean, I'm going to try and just see just right behind me. I don't know if it's going to be visible to you, but you can see that white cloth enclosure. That's the way it leads up to the room where that voting is taking place. And, you know, I think the Prime Minister has also made a very important point that the presidential elections are going to have a very big change, perhaps, on the political horizon. In fact, a short while back when we were here and the Prime Minister was speaking to us, he said this is a monsoon session which is particularly important because not just does it go closer to the Independence Day, but also we've chosen who we have chosen. There are some messages which is going across as far as choice of Droupadi Murmu is concerned. India at 75, women at 75, Droupadi Murmu rising from the ranks, not an entitled leader, someone who's a tribal, someone who's a woman, just to go on to show that the highest office in our country is something which is not a barrier for those who want to rise up. I know there's always going to be criticism from the other side, from the opposition, but clearly that's a message which the government wants to ignore. Clearly that's a message which the BJP is ignoring.
And Pallavi, first set of visuals now coming in from Uttar Pradesh Assembly, where the Chief Minister of UP, Yogi Adityanath, has gone to exercise his vote. He will be casting his vote any moment now. That is the Assembly of Uttar Pradesh, where Yogi Adityanath, Chief Minister, has gone to cast his vote. We have seen him welcome Droupadi Murmu in the State Assembly, where she addressed the State Assembly, addressed the BJP MLAs. We have seen breaking of ranks also that happened in UP. Number of parties withstood with Akhilesh Yadav, the switching sides, standing now with Droupadi Murmu on this candidature, be it Mr. Rajbhar or even Akhilesh Yadav's uncle Shivpal Yadav, all supporting Droupadi Murmu. So the first set of visuals coming in from Uttar Pradesh Assembly, Yogi Adityanath casting his vote for the next president of India. No surprises again. We know which way his vote is going, but the polling has begun. The visuals have started coming in from all state assemblies and also from the Parliament of India, where the Prime Minister has gone to cast his vote. So those visuals of Prime Minister, Mr. J.P. Nada, BJP President, Minister of State for Parliamentary Affairs, and also in the Prime Minister's office, all of them are walking towards the polling booth to cast their vote. Interesting day today, historic day today, as we see history in making clearly, with Droupadi Murmu all set to be the next president of India. But the big message that is coming in from the NDA is on the 75th Independence Day, just before that, India will be getting its first president, tribal president. Pallavi, let me go back to you. Pallavi, we are looking at those visuals, interesting visuals coming in from across the country, because I think all chief ministers would want to cast their vote, perhaps being the first in their respective state assemblies. But again, Pallavi, interesting what it is that the whip doesn't apply. As far as the process is concerned, there's no whip that can be issued, and it doesn't really apply to the MLAs and the MPs.
You know, and therefore I think the real story will actually come out on the 21st when the counting takes place, because, you know, while many of them are openly advocating their support for Yashwant Sinha, will there really be a real divide when it comes to the actual pattern of voting? Because mind you, in private, many of the constituents of the opposition spectrum do have their political compulsions. It's going to be very difficult for them, for example, to explain to their constituency, especially those who come in from tribal dominated states like a Jharkhand or a Chhattisgarh, some of which we are facing elections, on to explain why they did not vote for a tribal. For example, in Jharkhand, the Congress MLAs are very, very uncomfortable. I mean, they said it was easier for, say, the JMM to pledge their open support to Droupadi Murmu, but the party has taken a line where they're going to support Yashwant Sinha. How do they explain the fact that, well, yes, Yashwant Sinha may be belonging Bihar/Jharkhand, but the fact is, and he's been from Hazaribagh, a representative, but how do they explain the fact that they are not supporting a tribal? So when they go back to the elections, they go back to their voters, this is something which they may have to be confronted with. Similar is the case with Chhattisgarh and in other states as well, which is why I say the real story actually is going to be out on 21st, when we're going to get a slice-by-slice account of how the polling has taken place, who of those actually at the end of the day, when they went to cast their vote at the ballot box, broke away from the party's line and decided to vote along with the NDA's candidate. So the real story, frankly speaking, will actually come out on the 21st. So there's no doubt about the fact that she's the one who's going to be sitting at Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Yes, and it's a difficult choice for all those MLAs who have been, you know, elected from ST seats, that is the reserved scheduled tribe seats. Can they not vote? And can they really afford not to vote for India's first tribal president? Let me bring in Arun Datta. Arun Datta is outside Droupadi Murmu's residence here in the national capital. Where is the next president of India, I would say safely now, because we look at the numbers, yes, potential at the moment, but Arun Datta, we have seen her campaign in each and every state of India. She has reached out to all political parties. Soon after her name was announced, she did call up Sonia Gandhi. She also spoke to TMC Supremo Mamata Banerjee, called up Uddhav Thackeray. She reached out to every political party.
Well, that's right, Maria. As I speak about what she did during her campaign, I would request my camera person to just pan around and show the residence, the temporary residence of Droupadi Murmu, which is at the Pandit Uma Shankar Marg here in Chanakyapuri. So this is the residence of Droupadi Murmu, and she's very much inside her residence. But as far as whether she'll come out or not, there is no clarity if she is planning to move somewhere around. So there is no clarity on that regard. But of course, we have seen that Droupadi Murmu was on a country tour where she was in fact meeting different political parties, seeking vote for herself. And perhaps when we are talking now and the voting has started, we can say that she is very much in that position where she will not have any problem to reach the Rashtrapati Bhavan. The voting has started and the focus of BJP Maria has been on the voting, because and therefore they had conducted that training session in Bharatiya Janata Party's office, because they wanted that not even a single vote is wasted. The message came from JP Nadda's side and also from the Prime Minister's side. So all those agents who were present in Delhi for that training, they went in the states, also trained the BJP MLAs and the MPs for this day. So on the green paper, MPs will be, putting their name, and on the blue paper, MLAs will be, choosing the candidates. So the voting has started. It's quite certain who's going to win, but it is all about the percentage. How many votes Droupadi Murmu is going to vote? Whether there will be a cross voting from the MPs and MLAs, or they will stick to their stand, their party's stand. It is going to be very, very interesting to see on 21st as to what is going to be the percentage of winning.
It is about the percentage. We'll wait and see how it increases, perhaps. Let me bring in Shaugato Mukhopadhyay. Shaugato, Mamata Banerjee and all the TMC, okay, those are the visuals coming in from Parliament. Prime Minister Narendra Modi casting his vote in Parliament of India. This is an election which doesn't happen on the EVM machine, so there is no electronic voting machine. This is about paper ballot. So Prime Minister has just cast his vote. In fact, he is going to put that in that ballot box. Yes, so he is entering that room and thereafter he will be putting that in that ballot box that you can see. So Prime Minister casting his vote. He is perhaps the first in Parliament. Yes, he is clearly the first in Parliament to cast his vote, and that is JP Nadda entering that booth. So Prime Minister is now going to cast his vote. He will be putting that in that ballot box you can see. So the visuals that are coming in from Parliament of India, that ballot box that says Rashtrapati Ka Nirvachan. So Republic of India is voting for the President of India, is the visuals. The Prime Minister has just cast his vote. With that, the first voter in Parliament for the President of India was the Prime Minister of India. He was also the first proposer for Droupadi Murmu when she filed her nomination papers. Now all MPs have all come to Parliament. That is a Member of Parliament of the Congress Party, Nasir Hussain. You can see Sudhanshu Trivedi of the BJP there. All of them will exercise their votes and then perhaps head to the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, depending on the house they come from, because the session will begin at 11 a.m. That was Manikam Tagore of the Congress Party. So we really know which way they would be going, but perhaps state assemblies will have surprises given the number of scheduled tribe seats that are there, that they represent. Can they afford to not back the first tribal president of India? Shehzad Poonawalla of the BJP joining us. We have an interesting panel at 10 a.m. this morning as well. Shehzad, we are looking at those visuals, the Prime Minister being the first to cast his vote.
Maria, as I see these visuals, I literally have goosebumps on my hands, because what we are witnessing is history in the making.
Absolutely.
Maria, we are standing at the cusp of creating history, where a person who, despite her challenges personally and both socio-economically, is now going to be perhaps the first tribal woman president of India. And this is, I think, the most glorious moment in our quest for social justice and societal transformation. I'm sure you've read the piece written by Honorable President JP Nadda ji, and he's articulated the entire thought process behind the philosophy which Droupadi Murmu ji represents. She represents the spirit of New India that is indomitable. She represents the spirit of New India that says that you can rise up from a chai wala to be the Prime Minister, or you can rise up from being a clerk to becoming the highest constitutional position holder. And therefore, this is such a moment in history, Maria, not just for those who belong to the Adivasi community, but also for those who belong to the section of people, the women community, the 50% that has been discriminated against. So I think from both these perspectives, this is a history in the making. And if you see the trend of the NDA candidates, whether it was APJ Abdul Kalam, whether it was Ramnath Kovind ji, or now Droupadi Murmu ji, we have always tried to put up somebody who represents the spirit of the presidency, and therefore Nadda ji has articulated it very beautifully by calling it the people's president. Today we are electing for the first time the people's president, and therefore I think this is a moment in history that has been captured on your screens.
Yes, and let me bring in Mihir Trivedi. He is joining me from Mumbai. That's where Uddhav Thackeray will be heading soon. No, he is no longer MLA. So, as far as Shiv Sena MPs, Mihir, what about them? Will they be going to the State Assembly, or are they in Delhi and hence they will be voting in Parliament?
Absolutely, Maria. Good morning. Yes, Shiv Sena MPs will be voting in Parliament. They will be casting the vote in Delhi itself. In fact, from what I know at this point is that all of them are already there. As far as the Shiv Sena is concerned, of course, we know there is a vertical divide. There's a faction of Shiv Sena which is with Eknath Shinde. But when it comes to the appointment and giving the support to the presidential candidate, there were a series of meetings in last couple of days, and the Shiv Sena has unanimously decided, irrespective of the divide and the differences at this point, they have unanimously decided that they will support the NDA candidate, that is Droupadi Murmu. Now that is something we are seeing has not gone down well with the MVA. The MVA is of course supporting Mr. Yashwant Sinha, and we have seen Congress being very vocal. In fact, to an extent that the Congress has also said that the reason they are supporting Mr. Yashwant Sinha because it's not a matter of appointment of a tribal woman president, which is a matter of pride, but their fight goes beyond that. It is their fight against democracy, and it is important that there is a candidate like Mr. Yashwant Sinha who becomes the president. But clearly, as far as the MVA is concerned, while the NCP and Congress will be voting for Yashwant Sinha, the Shiv Sena has clarified its stand and they stick to it. Their MPs and MLAs have decided to go and vote for Droupadi Murmu. In fact, this is also not that kind of election. Here there is no whip, so clearly every individual MLA and MP has the right to cast his votes, and that sentiment as well as that support for Droupadi Murmu has gone far beyond, and we can see it. In fact, today many BJP leaders have entered in. In fact, Devendra Fadnavis is also the deputy CM of Maharashtra, is already inside, along with other senior leaders like Chandrakant Patel, who mentioned that while at this point the assessment is she will get over 60 to 70% of votes, but what appears is that she will surpass that number. And I can tell you there is some activity here. If I can ask my camera person to pan, it appears that CM Eknath Shinde ji is here. He is here in full support to cast his vote. He and his MLAs as well as leaders who are supporting him have clearly shown their support to Droupadi Murmu, and there's no doubt about that. And the kind of excitement and enthusiasm these leaders are showing today. Remember, the voting goes on from 11 to 5 p.m. so there is ample amount of time. But senior leaders, party heads are making sure they make their presence felt and give this message clearly to their people as well as MLAs at large that they are very serious about this presidential elections, and they want the candidate they are supporting, and that is Droupadi Murmu by and far.
So
of course,
Eknath Shinde, the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, has arrived at the assembly there to cast his vote. Let me go straight to Bengal now, where Saugata Mukhopadhyay is joining us live. Mamata Banerjee, for her it's a difficult choice. It's not just about the first tribal president, it is also about the second woman president, and she has said clearly that had the NDA announced the name of Droupadi Murmu earlier, much before they announced the name of Yashwant Sinha, she would have made a different choice perhaps.
Well, yes, Maria, she said that she would have given it a good hard consideration had the NDA candidate been announced prior to the opposition taking its own decision to field
Shaukat, stay with us.
Yashwant
We are
Sinha
visuals. We can see visuals also of Naveen Patnaik casting his vote at Odisha Assembly. Remember, it is also about the first Odia president of India. Droupadi Murmu has worked in the cabinet in Odisha as well, the Biju Janata Dal and the BJP cabinet, the alliance government that functioned in the 2000s. You can see Naveen Patnaik there casting his vote. When the BJP and the NDA had announced the name of Droupadi Murmu, he had welcomed it, saying it's a historic moment, a moment of great glory for the state of Odisha, because she comes from Odisha, and he had bagged her overwhelmingly. In fact, two of his aides are also the proposers, were the proposers for the nomination. He had sent his party MP and minister to back Droupadi Murmu in that nomination that was filed in Parliament of India. Let me go back to Shaukat Mukhopadhyay. Shaukat, we are looking at, before you talk about Mamata Banerjee, the decision that was taken by Naveen Patnaik. It's important, and understanding fully well that the BJP is looking at expanding its footprints in Odisha. They see Odisha as a catchment area, but he also understands that this is about history in making the first Odia president of India.
Well, not just the political footprint in Odisha. Maria, remember the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha too has extended its support for Droupadi Murmu, and Jharkhand is one state where the BJP would love to have its footprints expanded. So obviously, as far as Droupadi Murmu's candidature is concerned, there are support for her, not just from the NDA or its allies, NDA allies, or directly from the BJP, but also from some of the opposition parties. So obviously, there is a great advantage that Droupadi Murmu currently enjoys, as far as her candidature is concerned, and sealing of that final decision of who is going to be the next president of India is concerned. But look at Bengal, and since morning we've seen some very, very interesting developments taking place over here. We do know, Maria, that Shubhendu Adhikari, the leader of opposition, had arranged for every BJP MLA to be stationed at a private hotel in the outskirts of Kolkata in Rajarhat, and from there 65 MLAs came to the assembly. I'm standing right in front of the assembly. You can see one by one these MLAs, mostly belonging to the Trinamool Congress, coming in, getting inside to be present and prepared and cast their votes for the candidate of their choice. But as far as the BJP MLAs are concerned, they have arrived here in 2 buses since morning, and all of them were donning this, this attire, which showed that they were here to support a tribal candidate, a member of the tribal community. So that was it. But Shubhendu Adhikari, interestingly, Maria, just before entering the assembly, has said that we will ensure that we will get 70 votes from Bengal. We don't want I'm sorry, we don't want votes of others, and that's perhaps because of the reason that Shubhendu Adhikari is certainly not expecting anymore, that Trinamool Congress MLAs would be cross-voting for Droupadi Murmu. That's an interesting development. 70 votes from Bengal is what Shubhendu Adhikari is claiming would happen. Obviously, we'll only get to know about that on the 21st when the votes are counted. So that's the development from Bengal so far.
And Naveen Patnaik had said and told his party MLAs that here is the daughter of Odisha, Droupadi Murmu, who has been nominated to the highest office of our country. It is indeed a matter of honor and pride for our state. On behalf of the people of Odisha and BJD, we need to extend full support for the presidential elections which are being held today, that is July 18th. So, daughter of Odisha is how Naveen Patnaik spoke about her. Let me go back to the reporters who are tracking this story from all points. They have fanned across India, all state assemblies, Parliament of India, getting the voices, covering every aspect. Will there be a twist in the tale? We'll have to wait and see. But let me go straight to Anshul, who is joining me from outside Yashwant Sinha's home. After he returned to Delhi, he wrote a piece, an appeal to also BJP leaders that I have been part of the BJP. So vote for me. Did we see any of the BJP leaders visit him?
So that's right. No, Maria, since morning I've been stationed here since morning and none of the BJP leaders have come here. In fact, there has been no movement absolutely outside Yashwant Sinha's home since this morning, and the letter that is being said that he wrote, that is seemed to be the last thrust that Yashwant Sinha had put out, because look at the irony, Maria, it is going to be really very difficult for his own son Jayant Sinha, who is an MP from the BJP, to even go ahead and vote for his father himself. So yes, that is the irony that is playing out over here. What we are picking up is that Yashwant Sinha, there is some movement outside here. Basically, the media is being called in. What we are picking up is that Yashwant Sinha will be speaking to the media in the next few minutes. Now it remains to be seen what does he have to say on this whole situation.
Go ahead. Let me get a word from Saurav Rathod, who is outside Patna's assembly, in Bihar assembly in Patna. Saurav, not a big surprise there when Nitish Kumar announced his support. Okay, Jagan Reddy is casting his vote. YSRCP chief, Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy is there inside the Andhra Assembly to cast his vote. He backed Droupadi Murmu from the word go, also sent party leaders when the nomination paper was filed. So his party was also among the proposers, the long list of proposers that was there for Droupadi Murmu's nomination. So visuals coming in of Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister and also YSRCP Chief Jagan Mohan Reddy there casting his vote. Saurav Rathod is joining me from outside Bihar Assembly. Nitish Kumar, when is he likely to arrive?
Maria, we are expecting Nitish Kumar, although Nitish Kumar is not going to vote because he is from Legislative Council, and along with him many more ministers are not going to vote because they are from Legislative Council. But as far as Bihar is concerned, I'll give you the figures first, Maria. There are 40 Lok Sabha MPs from Bihar, 16 from Rajya Sabha, and there are 243 MLA seats, but 242 MLAs are going to vote because Anand Singh, who was a RJD MLA, he lost his membership because of his conviction. So total vote of 81,066 vote share is the total number of vote that is going to be casted here from Bihar. Around 39,200 votes are the vote share of MPs, and 41,866 votes are from Legislative Assembly. So overall 81,066 is the total figure of vote value that is going to be shared from Bihar. And now if we talk about political parties, we already know that JDU has supported Murmu, and also the LJP is going to support the BJP presidential candidate. And as far as opposition is concerned, Mahagathbandhan, they are supporting Yashwant Sinha, and we have heard Tejasvi Yadav giving a controversial statement about the BJP presidential candidate, saying that
Parliament, where Home Minister Amit Shah has arrived to cast his vote. In fact, I believe that is Gujarat Assembly perhaps. We'll try and get clarification on that. Home Minister there arriving to cast his vote. Those are visuals coming in now where the Home Minister is arriving to cast his vote. So the party MPs and MPs have the option to cast vote in the respective states as well. So Prime Minister Modi has just exercised his right, the right to cast vote as the Member of Parliament as well. So that has happened, and now Home Minister Amit Shah arriving to cast his vote. All of them were present when Droupadi Murmu's nomination papers were filed in Parliament of India. So visuals coming in at 11 a.m. is when the session begins. So perhaps most of these MPs would cast their vote before that, or even during the day that will happen. We are seeing those visuals coming in from Parliament of India. Exercise for the entire poll process has begun in state assemblies across the country as well. But Shehzad, the axis that has emerged, there are several surprise elements. I won't say JMM is a surprise, because Hemant Soren and Shibu Soren, his father, had little option but to back Droupadi Murmu. She is, of course, the first tribal president, going to be the first tribal president, but also she was the governor, and that they are the only tribal party of India. But did Shiv Sena come as a surprise? The fact that Uddhav Thackeray faction of Shiv Sena, they announced support for Droupadi Murmu?
Maria, you know,
मैं बोल देता हूँ, उसके बाद आप लोग सवाल पूछना होगा। द्रौपदी मुर्मू से बात हुई?
नहीं, अभी तक उनका कोई स्टेटमेंट नहीं आया।
ये आप लोग कहते क्यों नहीं है?
सर आप क्यों उम्मीद
सर, हम भी
नहीं, आप कहते क्यों नहीं है? आप इस बात को किसी मीडिया ने कहीं उठाया नहीं? खाली हम ही एक है जो अवेलेबल हैं, तो सब लोग हमें से बात करना। लेकिन खैर, मुझे खुशी है कि आज के दिन आप लोग यहाँ पर आए मेरे उम्मीदवारी के बारे में बात करने के लिए। ये चुनाव मैंने बार बार जोर दे के कहा है कि बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है, क्योंकि आने वाले दिनों में ये दिशा तय करेगा कि भारत में प्रजातंत्र बचेगा या धीरे धीरे करके समाप्त हो जाएगा। अभी तक जितने संकेत मिल रहे हैं उससे यही लग रहा है कि हम समाप्ति की ओर बढ़ रहे हैं, और इसीलिए पूरे देश में घूमकर और मीडिया के माध्यम से और भी जितने माध्यम उपलब्ध से उनके माध्यम से मैंने पूरे देश में ये संदेश देने का प्रयास किया है कि ये राष्ट्रपति का चुनाव क्यों इतना महत्वपूर्ण है। अब आज वोटिंग हो रही है। मैं सारे मतदाताओं से अपील करना चाहता हूं कि वो अपनी अंतरात्मा की आवाज़ सुने। ये वोट, जैसा आप जानते हैं, इसमें पार्टी का व्हिप नहीं जारी होता है और इसमें सीक्रेट बैलेट होता है। तो इसलिए हर किसी से उम्मीद की जाती है कि अपने विवेक अनुसार इसमें वोट डालेंगे। मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि जितने मतदाता हैं पूरे देश में वो अपने विवेक का इस्तेमाल करेंगे और प्रजातंत्र को बचाने के लिए मेरे पक्ष में अपना वोट कास्ट करेंगे। धन्यवाद।
सर, पहले भी आपने बोला था अंतरात्मा की आवाज सुनेगा। आपको लगता है कि
आपको उम्मीद है कि अंतरात्मा की आवाज?
पूरी उम्मीद है कि इससे फर्क पड़ेगा, इसलिए मैं ये अपील कर रहा हूँ
कि सर बीजेपी बहुत कॉन्फिडेंट है अपने नंबर्स को लेके कि उनकी तरफ से जो एनडीए का जो कैंडिडेट है वही प्रेसिडेंट बनेंगे, तो कैसे
फिर करने की जरूरत क्या है चुनाव? बीजेपी कॉन्फिडेंट है तो डिक्लेयर कर दे, चुनाव कराने की जरूरत है। बेकार दिन भर बर्बाद हो रहा है।
आप जिनसे उम्मीद कर रहे थे वो भी अब द्रौपदी मुर्मू का सपोर्ट एक्सटेंड कर रहे हैं, शिवसेना, जेएमएम।
मैं एक पॉलिटिकल लड़ाई ही नहीं लड़ रहा हूँ। आप सब जानते हैं कि मैं सरकारी एजेंसियों के खिलाफ भी लड़ाई लड़ रहा हूँ। इसमें सरकारी एजेंसियाँ बहुत सक्रिय हो गई हैं और राजनीतिक दलों में तोड़फोड़ करवाने का काम कर रही हैं। लोगों को इस बात के लिए बाध्य कर रही हैं कि वो उनके पक्ष में वोट डालें, और पैसे का भी खेल हो रहा है।
सर, क्या आप आज जाएंगे इस विटनेस करने के लिए? आप पार्लियामेंट जा रहे हैं आज?
सर, पार्लियामेंट
Yashwant Sinha, former BJP leader, is the candidate of the opposition parties. Just for our viewers, Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy was the only president of India who was elected unopposed. That was in 1977. He was proposed by Morarji Desai and supported by Indira Gandhi, who was then in opposition. Couldn't we have seen repeat of that this time around? That is the big question that I ask. And that, let me take that question to Tausif Ahmed. This could have been another moment in history where the opposition could have stood with Droupadi Murmu.
Well, the results are not out yet, and we have seen the presidential candidate Droupadi Murmu herself when she
Tausif,
visited
just hold
Kolkata.
on to your thoughts. We are seeing those visuals coming in from Madhya Pradesh Assembly, where Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan is going to in fact cast his vote. Madhya Pradesh, a BJP ruled state, the Chief Minister there going to cast his vote. Yes, go ahead, Tausif.
I was saying, as a presidential candidate, Ms. Droupadi Murmu is expected to seek votes from the MLAs when she visits a state assembly. Much like as the opposition candidate has been doing. He has been seeking vote from all the party MLAs. There is no party whip. Therefore, all MLAs and MPs can individually exercise their discretion and cast vote accordingly.
Yes, Tausif, I understand, but my question is, she did travel to all the states. She did travel to all the states. She did reach out to all political parties. In fact, soon after her name was announced, she had dialed Sonia Gandhi. She also spoke to Mamata Banerjee, to Sharad Pawar, to all senior leaders of various political parties. Kapil Madan is a political analyst and he joins me as well. Okay, let's listen in from Shivraj Singh Chauhan now.
वोटिंग कर रहे हैं और आनंद इस बात का है कि पहली बार एक आदिवासी बेटी, भारत की बेटी राष्ट्रपति बनेगी। उनको लेके केवल मतदाताओं में नहीं, क्योंकि एमएलए वोट डालते हैं राज्यों में, तो आम जन में भी जबरदस्त उत्साह है और ये भारत के लोकतंत्र की विशेषता है। अलग भाषा, अलग वेश, फिर भी अपना एक देश, एक हमारी बहन जनजाति समाज से आने वाली अब राष्ट्रपति बनेंगी। उत्साह से उनके पक्ष में मध्य प्रदेश में वोट हो रहा है और मैं तो यही अपील करूंगा कि दलगत सीमाओं से भी ऊपर उठ के हम अंतरात्मा की आवाज पर अपना वोट करें और बहन द्रौपदी मुर्मू को राष्ट्रपति बनाने में अपना भी योगदान दें।
As per conscience is an appeal coming in from the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh. Similar appeal has come from the BJP President JP Nada, Kapil Madan. History has it that in 1977, Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy was elected unopposed. His name was proposed by Morarji Desai and Indira Gandhi, who was in opposition, backed his candidature. Could 2022, shouldn't that have been the case even this time around? It is history in making. India will be getting its first tribal president.
So, Maria, I look at it from this perspective. Never in the history the country was so divided on the religious line, and we see, what is the plank of Bharatiya Janata Party. Bharatiya Janata Party rides very high on polarization, and in fact, we've seen continuous misuse of central agencies, be it ED, be it CBI, and now we are also seeing a new era where if any journalist, your colleague journalist raises any kind of voice against the government, how UAPs are being slapped, how one FIR after the other have been registered. So while I agree with you to an extent that Droupadi Murmu ji had a excellent past, but to me it looks like a right person in the wrong party at the wrong time.
Kapil Madan, again, the problem is that there is selective understanding of history and the background of individuals. Yashwant Sinha is a former BJP leader. So let's not forget, right people, wrong party, all that is all very well. These are nice phrases to be used. But what we are seeing today is very different. It's history. And all political parties who are not on this side are on the wrong side of history, away from political bitterness. This is about the first Adivasi president of India. Shehzad Poonawala, couldn't these appeals that we are seeing, be it by Mr. Nadda or by other politicians of your party, have come in earlier? That if it is about the people's president, the big symbolism of a tribal woman president, shouldn't that reach out have happened much earlier?
No, Maria, I believe you may have been at the party office when Nadda ji had declared the name of the NDA candidate via press conference, and at that point of time as well. And apart from that, various leaders of the BJP said that we appeal to all political parties because this is not an election of politics, this is an election of pratinidhitva, and this is an election of performance, and this is an election of the people's president. So we had appealed to all parties right from day one. We even appealed for all parties to support the vice president candidate Jagdeep Dhankar ji. Secondly, please let's not delegitimize the process of electing the first Adivasi woman president by time and again saying this is ED, this is CBI. JMM, for instance, and they come from Yashwant Sinha ji's state, they have supported us. Can the honorable spokespersons from the Congress party please call up Mr. Soren and ask him that if there was any pressure of any agency or whether it is a conscience call of JMM that they are supporting Droupadi Murmu ji's candidacy? You know, these kinds of allegations to be used loosely on television on such big platforms does not behove the moment that we are witnessing, and it doesn't behove the constitutional process underway. So unless you have stern proof that yes, some money has been transacted, some agency has been unleashed, please, I request my dear friends from the Congress, and I appeal to them also, may good sense prevail on them. It has prevailed on Uddhav ji, it has prevailed on Akhilesh Yadav's uncle Shivpal Yadav, it has prevailed on OP Rajbar, it has prevailed on perhaps even Mamta Banerjee. Who knows? She did not even invite Yashwant ji to Bengal after that.
Yes.
I don't think Mr. Yashwant Sinha got to go to Jhargram. So, you know,
yes,
if good sense is prevailing,
you know,
I hope we don't delegitimize this.
Yes, so, but you know, what Yashwant Sinha said, I mean, what is the basis of that allegation that he leveled? Here is an election that is going on, and it's not for the first time that the elections are happening for presidential polls. You know, you may have opposition to a candidate, but why raise questions on the entire process?
No question of entire process. When Miss Murmu came to Kolkata, she being the presidential candidate, she is expected by the Trinamool MLAs
I'm
to
the
seek
minister
votes for
there,
her, but she
Anurag
did not do
Thakur,
so.
exercising his right in Parliament of India. It's 10:42. All MPs then head to their respective houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, as the session, the monsoon session, which will begin at 11 a.m. All ministers, MPs of various political parties, we are getting those visuals from inside the polling booth in Parliament, that is room number 63 of the Parliament of India on first floor, where this entire exercise is happening. Yes, go ahead, Tausif.
I was making a point that BJP senior leader sent letters to Trinamool MLAs seeking vote for Miss Murmu. But when Miss Murmu came to Kolkata, she appealed to all BJP MLAs to vote for her. She did not appeal the Trinamool MLAs to vote for her. So there is a difference. The candidate herself is not given this opportunity or to seek votes from the opposition MLAs.
Well, that is
there is a
factually
difference.
incorrect. Tausif, that is factually incorrect. That is factually incorrect. She did call up Mamata Banerjee. Let's be clear about it,
you
Shehzad.
are factually incorrect.
I'm not being factually incorrect, Shehzad. Please correct.
To MLAs.
Yeah.
Request to MLAs, not request to Mamata Banerjee.
Yes, please, go
There
ahead.
is a difference. There is a difference.
Yes.
Maria.
Yes.
Please don't play with the words.
Please go
The
ahead, Shehzad.
letter request to Mamata Banerjee is different from the
Maria,
candidate
Yes,
seeking
please.
votes from the MLAs. I'm asking about the Trinamool MLAs.
Okay. Shehzad,
Maria,
yes.
if I may, and I think we don't need to, be cankerous about
Yes.
what we
No,
are
but
seeing
at
right
least
now
we
on
can be
television. I
factually
think
correct.
people are
Don't
also
mislead
watching
your
us.
viewers and don't
Tausif, can
call,
you please
no,
maintain the
don't
dignity
make
of this
allegation
debate? I
against
request you.
Uttarakhand
Tausif,
Chief
let's not
Minister
defile
there.
the
Those are the
moment by this
visuals
kind of
coming in,
debate.
coming in of Uttarakhand Chief Minister, Mr. Pushkar Dhami, casting his vote. That's a BJP rule state again. Yes, go ahead, Shehzad.
Maria was factually
Maria, the presidential candidate Srimati Droupadi Murmu reached out to all the important and relevant leaders of various political parties, even without them being in the NDA fold, and she reached out to them, and that is the right manner to approach. You can't be calling up individual leaders or individual MLAs. You have to approach the leaders of their party, and that was done, and it was done by various levels of our party. And we have no high horse of arrogance that we are sitting upon. We genuinely believe that Droupadi Murmu ji represents a set of value systems that everyone, casting aside political differences, must come and support. Please imagine where she has started off from. She has started off from those socio-economic backgrounds and circumstances and then risen up only on the basis of her performance. She was voted as the best MLA in 2007. So it's not just about pratinidhitva, it is also about performance. She was the longest serving Jharkhand governor, a unique thing to achieve that shows her skills in constitutional management between Raj Bhavan and Raj Sarkar. These are things that we need to celebrate in this country. We have an OBC Prime Minister, we have a cabinet that has 60% SC, ST, OBC people in them, and today we are going to have the historic occasion of the first tribal woman president of India coming from Odisha. Why are we being bitter about it? I'm sorry, I saw Mr. Yashwant Sinha's statements. I wish he was not so bitter, and I wish him well, even ahead, but I wish he was more accommodative and humble, because his statements or this name calling against Droupadi ji, whether it's Tejaswi ji, whether it is the Congress party, it only reflects poorly on them. To call her evil, to call her all kinds of names, does it behove us to do this at this point of time?
Kapil Madan, the elections did see a lot of bitter exchange. You may oppose her because of electoral calculations. You know, a number of political parties are opposing her because they had announced the name of Yashwant Sinha. But why make it so bitter?
So let me respond. In fact, I would like to remind Shahzad. Shahzad has used an expression evil. I know that it was context of one of the video that was, tweeted by Mr. Amit Malviya. And as expected, that video was turned out to be edited, and it was shown in an incorrect manner, showing a completely different picture. And this is not the first time this happens. This is the plank of the Bharatiya Janata Party. They have been doing this. Their IET cell has been doing that. Of course, you will have political differences, and it is in a democracy. You have a right to say your own voice. If you want to support a candidate because of his past, of course there is an opposition candidate also. But at the same time, you need to be mindful of the fact that ultimately it's a democracy, and what we are witnessing here is extreme form of polarization by the BJP. And without questioning Mrs. Murmu's past, I would just like to say one thing is, while she is being nominated by the BJP, she has been an active member of the BJP. What is her personal view on the kind of polarization that the BJP is riding high on? I have not heard any statement on that aspect, whether you want to take the country together, Bharat Jodo, or you want to move ahead by doing that religious divide which the Bharatiya Janata Party is very fond of.
A quick word from you, Shahzad, and then I bring in the reporters.
Maria, first of all, it was a JMM MLA, I think 7-time MLA, who has asked the Congress party to apologize for Ajoy Kumar's remarks. So please, Mr. Nalin Soren, if I get his name right, here is the news report confirming that. So I wish we speak on facts, and as far as Ms. Murmu's views are concerned, Mrs. Murmu's views are reflected by the personality that she has. She reflects the idea of New Bharat, where performance and not parivar is the benchmark for testing a person's capacity.
Just a quick
constitutional commitment
an interesting
is clear.
fact here. Droupadi Murmu is also the first, she'll be the first president born after independence. So when we look at the Naya Bharat aspect, she's also going to be the first president born in independent India. Go ahead.
Absolutely, Maria. And Maria, there are so many firsts that are attached to this presidency, and therefore, again, once in the most humblest tone that I can command, I request with folded hands, like our party president has, that we must all cast away political bitterness and political differences, and we must support and stand on the right side of history. Today, history is beckoning us. Are we going to support a person who comes from the Adivasi community, who's a woman, to become the president, or are we going to be obstacles and roadblocks to this process? I hope my friends in the opposition who are listening, particularly on this panel, will not be roadblocks to that historic occasion.
All right, Shehzad Poonawalla, Tausif and Kapil Madan, thank you so much for joining us. Let me go straight to Vijay Chowk, where Siddhant is joining me live. Siddhant, a number of MPs have exercised their right. Most of them would want to do so before 11 a.m., before the parliament session begins. Do we have some idea of how many have cast their votes already?
Well, Maria, most of these MPs are casting their votes here in Parliament, but the parties like TMC, their MPs will be casting vote in their state at Vidhan Sabha. This is what we have been told. And also, Maria, since this election process doesn't require whip, or for that matter, whip doesn't apply, so in this in such scenario, there are chances of cross voting, which gets increased, and this is perhaps the reason that the regional parties take utmost precautions as far as this presidential elections are concerned, and this is perhaps the reason that the TMC
just hold on to your thoughts.
MPs
Those are the visuals coming in of Bhupendra Patel, Gujarat Chief Minister, casting his vote inside Gujarat Assembly. Remember, Gujarat goes to polls later this year. It is a state which has a significant tribal population and also a number of scheduled tribes, a number of seats that are reserved for scheduled tribes as well. So as far as electoral calculations in this nomination is concerned, that is one aspect that is being highlighted. Go ahead, Siddhant. We can see those visuals. State assemblies, Parliament of India, everywhere MPs and MLAs casting their votes.
Well, that's right, Maria. So I was highlighting this point that you know, in these scenarios, the regional parties are more cautious, and this is the reason that the parties like TMC, most of their MPs are voting in Bengal only. Also, Maria, you know, the Droupadi Murmu's side and the way the regional parties have supported Droupadi Murmu, from Shiv Sena to JMM and many others, have supported and shown their support and faith in the leadership of Droupadi Murmu, you know, has made the opposition candidate, and in fact this entire united opposition, the strong message which these opposition parties wanted to give has shattered completely, because you know, JMM has supported Droupadi Murmu, Shiv Sena has supported Droupadi Murmu, and in fact today the piece of party president JP Nadda, BJP party president JP Nadda, in a newspaper where he has appealed to the legislators, to the voters across India to vote for Droupadi Murmu. So in this scenario especially, the chances of cross voting increases, and this is perhaps the reason that regional parties are cautious. But right now the voting in the parliament is currently underway. In fact, from Prime Minister to all the other central ministers have gone to cast their votes, and as you have rightly mentioned, the idea has always been to cast vote before the session of parliament begins. So most of these MPs are queuing outside the voting room, and they are going to cast their vote. But
so
many
stay
of
with
the
us.
MPs
Those are the visuals also coming in from Odisha Assembly, where Naveen Patnaik has already exercised his right, and so are the MLAs of BJD. Remember, Droupadi Murmu comes from Odisha's Mayurbhanj district. She started off as a teacher before entering state politics. She worked also in the coalition government. She worked as a minister in the coalition government of the BJD and the BJP in early 2000. And she was also sworn in as the first woman governor of Jharkhand in 2015. So two states which have a significant tribal population. She has had association with both these states, and that is the reason why we are seeing both JMM Supremo and Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren backing her candidacy, and also the Chief Minister of Odisha Naveen Patnaik announcing his support for his support and BJD's support for Droupadi Murmu. Siddhant, we are seeing breaking of ranks happen as we have seen before every presidential polls. Interesting developments because of the choice of the BJP. Many are seeing this as an epic choice. The first tribal president of India.
Well, Maria, whatever decision BJP takes, there is a league, a master stroke league. So after that decision, the master stroke league starts calling it a master stroke of Bharatiya Janata Party. But this time around, Droupadi Murmu's name, declaring Droupadi Murmu's name for the president post was indeed a master stroke, because the way the opposition parties were uniting, the way they wanted to give a strong candidate for the post of president. And in fact, time and again there were several meetings also that held in national capital, chaired by Mamata Banerjee, chaired by Sharad Pawar. There several names were discussed, from Farooq Abdullah to Gopal Krishna Gandhi, and then Yashwant Sinha's name was given. But the time Droupadi Murmu's name was announced, in fact the people in the opposition camp, the MPs from the opposition camp called this very decision a master stroke by Bharatiya Janata Party. A, she's a woman. B, she comes from a very humble background. And C, she comes from Adivasi community. The very strong message has gone, not just for the people of the country, but for the voters also who are participating in this process. Because many of these MPs, MLAs get elected from the Adivasi belts, and even if they go with their party, and if they don't vote for Droupadi Murmu, in that case, if this is what the MPs are telling us, then their voters will question them that why have they not voted for Droupadi Murmu. So
13 states of India have a significant tribal population and a number of scheduled tribe seats. So what will these MLAs do? They have to go back and answer to their constituents. What will these MPs who are in opposition camp do? Remember, the whip doesn't apply in these elections. The whip doesn't apply in presidential polls. So that is the reason why this appeal to conscience being made, be it by Yashwant Sinha and also by the BJP. Let's listen in from Samajwadi Party Chief Akhilesh Yadav now.
देश की अर्थव्यवस्था क्या है? आप पड़ोसी देश देखिए, श्रीलंका में क्या हालत हो गई गलत नीतियों के कारण। कम से कम कोई ऐसा बैठे जो समय समय पर सरकार को बता सके। और आपने तो देखा था उत्तर प्रदेश में जो गवर्नर थे वो समय समय पर बताते थे किस जाति के लोग पोस्टेड हैं, क्या सरकार की कमी है। आज कौन बोल रहा है?
लेकिन बीजेपी तो शिवपाल सिंह यादव के पत्र को लेकर के आप पे हमलावर हो रहे हैं।
देखिए नेताजी के लिए ये भाषा बीजेपी की पहली बार नहीं है। भारतीय जनता पार्टी का चरित्र रहा है कि जो सेकुलर लड़ाई लड़ेंगे, जो सोशलिस्ट लड़ाई लड़ेंगे, उनके खिलाफ इस तरह का प्रचार करें, दुष्प्रचार करें। और ये पहली बार भारतीय जनता पार्टी नहीं है। नेताजी ने जिस समय लोकतंत्र को बचाने के लिए काम किए, तो उस समय भारतीय जनता पार्टी की भाषा और व्यवहार क्या था, ये भूल जाएगा कोई क्या? भारतीय जनता पार्टी का चरित्र कैसा है ये पूरा देश जानता है कि जो लोग सोशलिस्ट लड़ाई लड़ेंगे, जो लोग सेकुलर लड़ाई लड़ेंगे, भारतीय जनता पार्टी का भाषा और व्यवहार कैसा है।
ओम प्रकाश राजभर की राजनीति को कैसे आप देख रहे हैं? ओम प्रकाश राजभर कभी कहते हैं कि आपको वो मौका दे रहे हैं, दूसरी बार कहते हैं कि अगर अखिलेश यादव उनका साथ छोड़ देंगे तो बीएसपी के साथ चले जाएंगे।
देखिए ये पार्टियां जिनको जो फैसला लेना है, समाजवादी पार्टी अपने कार्यक्रमों से नहीं हटने वाली। और लोहिया का वो सिद्धांत याद रखें, लोहिया।
So 4 months ago, all those who were standing with Akhilesh Yadav, be it his uncle Shivpal Yadav or Om Prakash Rajbhar, all of them contesting with the Samajwadi Party, now they have decided to back the candidacy of Droupadi Murmu. So Akhilesh Yadav also is witnessing breaking of ranks in his camp as well. Let me go back to Siddhant. Siddhant, we are looking at census of 2011, the last census. 8.6% of all Indians, that is 10.42 crore Indians numerically, are notified STs, that is scheduled tribes, and they form 11.3% of the total rural population. They are spread in Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, several parts of Northeast as well. That is the reason why, electorally speaking, all those states that go to polls in the next 1.5 years, that is Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, the BJP is hoping that this announcement and this election of Droupadi Murmu to the highest constitutional office in the country will help them yield political dividend as well.
Well, that's absolutely right, Maria, and you understand numbers better than me. In fact, Maria, you know, all these opposition party leaders are raising question that why is she not talking, why is she not speaking, why is she not, you know, coming out and speaking to media. In fact, from Tejasvi Yadav to Akhilesh Yadav, they all have raised similar questions. In fact, Yashwant Sinha also went on to say that she's going to be a symbolic president representing one community. But the fact here remains, Maria, you remember I was going through this article in one newspaper in 2016 when Raghubar Das came out with those two acts, you know, in which the forest land was being transferred to industries smoothly. Those bills were stopped for 8 months, and then later those bills were returned to the cabinet, and cabinet was asked to reconsider and make amendment. So and I remember, you know, the people close to Droupadi Murmu at that point in time gave this statement in media that it was a statement which came from her कि मैं अपने कलम से अन्याय नहीं होने दूंगा, अपने कलम से injustice नहीं होने दूंगी. तो जो लोग भी हमारे ये सवाल उठा रहे हैं कि एक symbolic एक चेहरा रहेंगी, स्टैचर रहेगा, आदिवासी कम्युनिटी से हैं, वो उनका इतिहास भी एक बार पढ़ लें. They should also go through the history as while she was serving as a governor of Jharkhand. You know, the incumbent chief minister
The monsoon session of Parliament has begun. Those are the visuals coming in from the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Let's listen in to the audio first.
महासचिव उत्तर प्रदेश श्री घनश्याम सिंह लोधी.
The new MPs will be happening in the Lok Sabha. There have been by-polls that were held recently. So all those who have been elected from these constituencies will be sworn in. So the process of that is happening. And Siddhant, what you were telling, just to recall that, that those bills were never passed. In fact, she has been honest to the tribal cause is what the larger sentiment is. And she has stood for it. She will not be seen as a rubber stamp precedent is also the larger sense. Yes, in 2017 when the BJP under Raghubar Das was in power in the state of Jharkhand, they had proposed amendments to Santal Pargana Tenancy Act of 1949. This was the bill which wanted the rights to tribals to make commercial use of their lands. What was seen by Droupadi Murmu at that time was that this was not in the interest of the tribals. So she stood against the then Chief Minister, Mr. Raghubar Das, and she was seen as standing with the rights of the tribals. Let me go straight to Pallavi Ghosh, who's joining me on the phone line. Pallavi, the first set of visuals coming in of the monsoon session of Parliament has begun.
Yes, that's right, and it actually begins with orbit reference, and it also begins with office reference to Sheikh Hazir of UAE. And remember, the Prime Minister had offered his condolences there, and also to Abe, who was the former Prime Minister of Japan. Also, in a sense, showing the close equations with the Prime Minister himself shared with the Prime Minister of Japan. But there are a slew of bills which are listed for this entire monsoon session of Parliament, actually going up to more than 27 bills. Today itself, there are 2 bills which are listed in Rajya Sabha as well as Lok Sabha, despite the fact that much of the MPs would also be busy with the presidential elections. Well, the monsoon session of Parliament, I would say, Maria, becomes very, very significant even politically, because it's going to be not just a launching pad for the presidential elections and vice presidential elections, and also the many political permutations and combinations which comes with it. It also leads up to the 75th year of India's independence. It, of course, is also going to lead up to, inch us closer to the critical state elections like Gujarat as well as, Himachal Pradesh, and later on, of course, Karnataka and so on and so forth. But I think inside the Parliament, which is going to be put to test once again, is already bitter equations between the opposition and the government. The Prime Minister himself reached out earlier today The government also reached out saying that we are ready to discuss. But it was also very interesting, Maria, to see that despite the so-called belief of the opposition that they are not going to be allowed to carry on the dharnas and demonstrations, I did manage to see some of them actually doing those dharnas outside the Mahatma Gandhi statue. I think that's also going to be another point of confrontation between the two sides, with the opposition accusing the government of trying to muzzle the voice of their political opponents.
Yes, and the first set of visuals that are coming in is of the swearing in of the newly elected MPs in both the houses of Parliament, the Lok Sabha, where there have been by-polls in a number of constituencies, and also the Rajya Sabha, where the MPs have just been elected in the respective state assemblies as well. So that is Meesa Bharti of the RJD swearing in as an MP again. Those visuals coming in of the Lok Sabha as well of Gorakhpur MP who has just taken oath of the Lok Sabha as a member of Parliament. Let me go back. That is Shatrughan Sinha swearing in. He has just won from Bengal. So Siddhant, visuals coming in, but on the issue of Agni Path, Siddhant, the government's counter has been that whether it is for Indian Air Force or Indian Army or Indian Navy, when the notifications for recruitment began, the kind of response that they got was clearly an indication that there are several Agniveers who would want to be part of the services rather than they would be going with what they saw as a manufactured protest for a few days.
Well, that's right. In fact, Maria, at that point in time also, I remember the time this scheme was announced, and there were press conferences which were being taken every day by the generals of the armed forces. At that point in time also, we were told that all these protests are manufactured, they are being done because of the political motives, and they are being fueled by certain political parties. And in fact, at that point in time also, this announcement was made that those involved in riots, those involved in vandalizing the public properties, they will not be inducted in the Agniveer scheme. And you see, Maria, right after that, all these protests got stopped, and in fact, the government has started the enrollment, the process, and the people from these northern states only, the aspirants, they are getting themselves enrolled in large number. So it is again a proof that whatever protest happened at that time, or the trains which were vandalized, were nothing but because of the political motives and were manufactured protests. But opposition still believes that this issue has a potential, and this is perhaps the reason that the two of the MPs from the Congress party, and in fact some MPs from the left parties, have given notices in the House and have asked for a discussion on the issue of Agniveer. Now, opposition has to say, Maria, that this latest decision by the Secretariat to ban some words and to tag them as unparliamentary is nothing but to trap the opposition party in unnecessary debate. The real issue is Agni Path. This is what opposition is saying, and they are going to make sure that the House discusses this Agni Path scheme, that has been announced by the government. So almost all of these opposition parties, mainly Congress and the left parties, are adamant. But again, Maria, what I'm picking from my sources in Shiv Sena, they are telling us that they are going to go soft on the government as far as Agniveer scheme is concerned. So the parties like Shiv Sena may announce their support for the Agniveer scheme, and we should not be surprised if they do so, because they feel that this scheme is in favor of the youth of the country, and this will generate employment, and also this will give trained youth to the country. So this is also what I'm being told.
All
Back
right.
to you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Siddhant. And let me bring in the guests at this hour. Radhika Ramaseshan, columnist; Tushar Gupta, senior editor of Swarajya magazine. Radhika, you have tracked politics for years. Could 2022 have been 1977, when Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy's candidature was that, when he was elected unopposed? could we have seen this on 75th year of India's independence, a historic moment, certainly where India will be getting its first tribal president?
Yeah, Maria, you know, it's about the 75th year of India's independence. But more significantly to me, it is about the candidacy of Droupadi Murmu. I mean, as soon as it was announced, I felt personally that the opposition should have backed off and supported her. You know, this is grandstanding. I mean, you're not making any important political point, or there is no sort of virtue messaging in what you are doing. I mean, it's simply grandstanding to show that there exists an opposition, we have the numbers, we can put up a fight, but look at the end result. I mean, Mamata Banerjee's whole attitude has been
मित्र खोया है। श्री आम्बे अपनी आत्मीयता, बुद्धिमता, व्यक्तित्व की गंभीरता, सादगी तथा अपनी राजनीतिक सूझबूझ के लिए सदैव याद किए जाएंगे। ये सभा श्री शिंजो आबे के निधन पर शोक व्यक्त करती है और इस दुख की घड़ी में उनके परिवार, सरकार और जापान के लोगों के प्रति अपनी गहरी संवेदना व्यक्त करती है। महामहिम सदस्यगण, मुझे संयुक्त अरब अमीरात के राष्ट्रपति और अबू धाबी के शासक महामहिम शेख खलीफा बिन जायद अल नयान के 13 मई 2022 को हुए निधन के बारे में सभा को सूचित करना है। महामहिम शेख खलीफा को संयुक्त अरब अमीरात के विकास और उनके नेतृत्व में भारत संयुक्त अरब अमीरात द्विपक्षीय संबंधों को सुदृढ़ बनाने में उनके योगदान के लिए सदैव याद किया जाएगा। उन्होंने संयुक्त अरब अमीरात में बसे विशाल भारतीय समुदाय के हितों का संरक्षण किया। इसी कारण उन्हें वहां निवास कर रहे भारतीय समुदाय का भरपूर आदर और सम्मान मिला है। ये सभा शेख खलीफा के निधन पर शोक व्यक्त करती है और शोक की घड़ी में संयुक्त अरब अमीरात की सरकार और वहां की जनता के प्रति अपनी संवेदना व्यक्त करती है। माननीय सदस्यगण, मुझे अत्यंत दुख के साथ केन्या के राष्ट्रपति श्री मवाई किबाकी के दुखद निधन के बारे में सूचित करना है। भारत श्री किबाकी को एक ऐसे महान राजनेता के रूप में याद करता है जिन्होंने भारत केन्या संबंधों को और घनिष्ठ और मैत्रीपूर्ण बनाने में सही योगदान दिया। हम वर्ष 2008 और 2011 के भारत अफ्रीका फोरम शिखर सम्मेलनों में उनकी सक्रिय भागीदारी को भावुकता के साथ याद करते हैं। ये सभा श्री मवाई किबाकी के निधन पर शोक व्यक्त करती है और केन्या गणराज्य की सरकार और वहां की जनता के प्रति।
So condolence messages being read out by the Lok Sabha Speaker, Mr. Om Birla. Tushar Gupta, let me go back to the big event that is playing out today, that is the election of the President of India, Droupadi Murmu, the selection, and of course the big political messaging, but also the one that we are seeing, it's a rare moment in history unfold as we talk about it, but the one that is also seeing emerging political axis. Tushar.
You know, Maria, these are the days you celebrate democracy for. Over 700 MPs across the two houses, over 4,000 MLAs across the country voting for the president. It's these days make you excited for democracy that we are. But it's unfortunate the kind of behavior that has been displayed by the opposition, the kind of snarky comments that have been made by some parties. Of course, the way the numbers are stacked right now, Ms. Murmu is clearly going to be the president, the next president of India on July 2021 when the results come out. But what's unfortunate is the kind of reaction we've got from the opposition. Some offices are beyond the routine political bickering. I always emphasize this. The office of the president, the office of the vice president, the political bickering will go on every day. These are routine things. But these offices are beyond all this. But the kind of comments that have been made by some parties in the opposition, especially the RJD, that is very unfortunate. And I agree with my co-panelists here that the opposition perhaps should have backed off. They never had a candidate in the first place. They were turned down by 2 or 3 candidates, including Farooq Abdullah in Kashmir, before they came to Yashwant Sinha from the Trinamool. So ideally, opposition should have gone without a candidate of their own. But now that they have, the least they could have done is display some team spirit, respect the choice of the NDA. But unfortunately, they have not even done that.
Tushar and Radhika, stay with us. We are slipping into a short break. Lots more news and updates on the other side.
कभी आपने सोचा है फोन बिल, बिजली का बिल, EMI हर महीने, पर आपके सेविंग्स अकाउंट में इंटरेस्ट 3 महीने में एक बार। लेकिन अब कोई है जो सेविंग्स अकाउंट में इंटरेस्ट दे रहा है 3 महीने में नहीं, बल्कि हर महीने। IDFC फर्स्ट बैंक। यही तो है इनकी ऑलवेज यू फर्स्ट वाली सोच। IDFC फर्स्ट बैंक, ऑलवेज यू फर्स्ट।
OLX ऑटोज ही देता है आपकी कार का बेस्ट प्राइस। सुनीता, सुना तुमने ये क्या बोल रहे हैं?
यही कि OLX ऑटोज देता है आपकी कार का बेस्ट प्राइस। ये प्राइस ही नहीं, सरप्राइज है। विजिट olxautos.in।
कैसी हंसी मुस्कानों की धुन, जिंदगी मक्खन, खोलो ढक्कन, डूबी-डूबी-डू, जिंदगी मक्खन,
अमूल बटर,
पतली डिलीशियस।
म्यूचुअल फंड्स में बैटिंग की तरह टाइमिंग इंपॉर्टेंट है।
गलत। बैटिंग के लिए टाइमिंग सही है, म्यूचुअल फंड्स के लिए टाइम स्पेंड इन मार्केट बिल्कुल सही है। मतलब जितना टाइम मार्केट में स्पेंड करेगा, फायदा होने का चांस उतना ही बढ़ेगा।
एकदम सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
सर, what laptop would you suggest to practice coding on weekdays and gaming on the weekends?
Ask the experts at Chroma. Back to school new season.
The Meridian, where contrasts come together and sophistication runs wild. Presenting a Jeep SUV that gives you the best of both worlds. The all-new Jeep Meridian, untamed sophistication.
This Prime Day, discover the joy of great deals. Blockbuster entertainment and new launches. This Prime Day, discover the world of joy. 23rd and 24th July. Join Prime now.
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कर आता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
OLX ऑटोज ही देता है आपकी कार का बेस्ट प्राइस। सुनीता, सुना तुमने ये क्या बोल रहे हैं?
यही कि OLX ऑटोज देता है आपकी कार का बेस्ट प्राइस। ये प्राइस ही नहीं, सरप्राइज है। विजिट olxautos.in।
New Citroën C3. Express your style.
आपने बिना कारण किचन का सारा सामान बदला क्यों?
प्यार, योर ऑनर। और मैं सबूत दे सकता हूँ कि मैंने पुराने के बदले कुछ बेहतर लिया।
सबूत पेश करो।
अगर आसानी से साफ होने वाला गैस स्टव, आटा भी गूंथने वाला मिक्सर ग्राइंडर, स्पिलेज कंट्रोल वाला स्वच्छ प्रेशर कुकर, 5 लेयर कोटिंग वाला टिकाऊ कुकवेयर, कुकर की सीटी गिनने वाला इंडक्शन कुकटॉप भी एक्सचेंज में मिल जाए तो
एक्सचेंज में?
जी हाँ, बेहतरीन डिस्काउंट वाला प्रेस्टीज का एनीथिंग फॉर एनीथिंग एक्सचेंज फेस्टिवल।
जो बीवी से करे प्यार, वो प्रेस्टीज से कैसे करे इनकार?
अधिक से अधिक पाने का ख्वाब, अपेक्षाओं का दबाव, टेंशन को मिटाने में शिक्षा नहीं हो रही कामयाब। चाहे कोई मालामाल है पर नाखुश है तो कंगाल है, एक हंसी के लिए परेशान और बेहाल है। दिल्ली सरकार ने शुरू की एक पहल, नर्सरी से 8वीं तक हुई हैप्पीनेस क्लास की शुरुआत। तन से हैप्पी, मन से रहने की मिली सौगात। दिल्ली के सरकारी स्कूलों में होता 45 मिनट का हैप्पीनेस पीरियड। ध्यान के साथ सीखते बच्चे, मन को शांत करने का मतलब। पढ़ाई में लगता मन, तनाव और गुस्से में आ रही कमी। प्यार और अच्छे व्यवहार के बच्चे बन रहे धनी। यह है दिल्ली सरकार का हैप्पीनेस करिकुलम। बच्चे को रखता खुश, टेंशन करता कम।
दिल्ली के सरकारी स्कूलों में पिछले 4 साल से हैप्पीनेस क्लास चलाई जा रही है। बच्चे और टीचर्स बताते हैं कि हैप्पीनेस क्लास की वजह से बच्चे पढ़ाई पर फोकस करने लगे हैं, और पेरेंट्स बताते हैं कि बच्चे अब उनकी ज़्यादा रिस्पेक्ट करने लगे हैं। हैप्पीनेस क्लास के 4 साल पूरे होने के मौके पर दिल्ली सरकार 14 जुलाई से 29 जुलाई तक हैप्पीनेस उत्सव मना रही है। आप भी अपने नज़दीकी स्कूल में आएं और हैप्पीनेस उत्सव का हिस्सा बने।
breaking news coming in now. Madras High Court hearing the case of an alleged suicide in Tamil Nadu. The judge has directed the Tamil Nadu government to form special teams to identify those who provoked Sunday's violence regarding Kallakurichi girl's death. The judge said this does not appear to be a mere provocation. It appears to be an organized crime. Judge has ordered re-post-mortem in the case of Kallakurichi girl by a team of doctors appointed by him. Entire post-mortem to be videographed as well. Purnima Murali is joining me on the phone line. Purnima, the student is suspected to have jumped to her death from the 3rd floor of the school building, and the autopsy report had confirmed injuries on the girl's body. And the suicide note clearly has spoken about how she struggled in several of her school subjects as well, and she had blamed the school teachers for putting her under pressure over her poor scores. Now, who were the petitioners in the Madras High Court? Was it a PIL, and what followed after the alleged suicide?
Well, the petition was moved by the father demanding a CBCID probe. But earlier yesterday, after violence erupted outside the school premises where many properties were damaged, the case was already transferred to the CBCID, and 2 of them belonging to the AIADMK IT wing were also arrested because of provocation. Today, the Madras High Court heard the case and has come down heavily on those who had damaged to the property, saying that this was an organized crime and special teams should be formed to ensure that whoever is behind it at the earliest. And the father, his petition also demanded that the postmortem be conducted because they did not select the girl's body, and the judge said that there could be a re-postmortem in this case. Lawyers and the father can also, after the postmortem.
Prohibitory orders were in fact imposed at several places in Tamil Nadu's Kallakurichi district after protesters clashed with police, and they indulged in arson at a residential school on Sunday to protest against alleged inaction following the death of a 17-year-old student earlier this week. Several people, including police officers, were injured in the violence that happened at the residential school. Later on Sunday, the school principal and 2 school officials were arrested, and the government transferred the suicide case to the CBCID. The protesters had set on fire at least 15 buses, including 3 police buses as well. So what was the motivation of this violence? Why did this violence take place? All that will be investigated. The High Court has now set up a special team, and the entire violence that followed the death will be investigated now. The Chief Minister, remember, had expressed regret over the violence and assured punishment for all those involved in the girl's death as well. He had appealed for peace too. Khushbu Sundar of the BJP is now joining me on the phone line. Khushbu, we are seeing the order that has come of the Madras High Court. They are saying clearly that what appeared, in terms of the violence, there was more than just provocation. It was an organized crime.
We need to return to investigation. It says that it's an organized crime. We need to find out who was behind this, organizing this such crime. What happened? It's very, very unfortunate that we lost a very young girl to suicide, and we need to investigate that first as to what caused the death. We need to punish those who have been responsible for her death, whoever they may be, however politically influential they might be. We need to investigate that and punish them. And yes, we also need to look into this as to what caused the violence. If somebody has instigated it, if it was a planned one, then yes, anybody who spreads violence, who spreads this kind of riot, needs to be given the biggest punishment, because we cannot tolerate in the land of ahimsa, we cannot tolerate this kind of violence.
Yes, there was a call that was made by some youth groups on social media. That is, of course, subject of investigation, Khushbu. But who really organized this violence is the larger question, because more than 2,000 people had gathered outside the school. So there are several aspects of this violence that played out on Sunday is now subject of investigation. But the larger question that is being raised by the Madras High Court is also, was this just some kind of provocation, but it appears also to be an organized crime?
See, that's what I'm saying. The court says this needs to be investigated. Now, only the investigation is going to come to a conclusion. But organizing 2,000 people, no, it's not possible. There could be a small group who had instigated and organized this kind of a crime and riot. It's very easy to influence people because the emotions are running really high. Any kind of justice is required, and it's easy to get influenced. So I wouldn't say that the entire 2,000 mob was organized, but if the court has observed that there is, chances of, or this was an organized crime, then we need to investigate whoever it may be, however small or big that group is. We need to find them out. We need to identify them, and we need to set a very clear record of the kind of punishment that is meted out, that nobody else can instigate a mob to get involved or to create this kind of a riot. We need to send out a very clear message that law is about everyone else.
Absolutely.
And you need to abide by the law.
So the Madras High Court has ordered second autopsy. And also at the same time has said that there seems to be a larger conspiracy behind this entire violence. A. Saravanan of the DMK is joining me as well. Mr. Saravanan, the question really is there some kind of intelligence failure of the police too? Because if there is a gathering of this nature, 2,000 people gathering outside a school with a call that came on social media, what was your police doing? What was your intelligence doing?
See, what has happened is unfortunate, very unfortunate. This is sent shockwaves across the state of Tamil Nadu, because this is a kind of violence which the state of Tamil Nadu had never ever seen. It is a very heart-wrenching death. Any death of a student, that of a young girl, is heart-wrenching, and justice is being meted out to them. It is the first post-mortem clearly indicated that the preliminary report said this is the case of suicide. So action is being taken on this. But the larger thing is, as pointed out by the Madras High Court, the larger conspiracy, who is responsible for this violence? Certainly some fringe elements who have taken this into their hands, and they are trying to blow it out of proportion. That is what has happened, and the government, Tamil Nadu government, will ensure that this violence, whoever is the perpetrator behind this violence, is brought to book, and this kind of violence never happens. When you say fringe elements, then why are two AIA DMK party functionaries, why have they been arrested? Because they have been posting incendiary comments in the social media. That is the reason, and whoever has perpetrated this in the social media, they are being booked, and whoever is responsible, even remotely connected, they will be brought to book, because this kind of violence is new to the state of Tamil Nadu. This has never happened. And when action is being taken, this is not an incident where there is total apathy. Postmortem was done. The minister of the concerned district has met with the parents. Justice is being meted out to the victim. But some unruly elements, some fringe elements some political elements who want to blame the Tamil Nadu government on the law and order issue, trying to...
And Khushbu, stay with us, because there is another piece of breaking news that is coming in now. Major private school associations in Tamil Nadu has now announced closure of schools in the state today to condemn the violent protests that erupted at a residential school in Kallakurichi following the alleged suicide of a student. So now schools will be shut across the state, is what we are being told. The private school associations in Tamil Nadu has announced that the schools in the state should be closed today. Purnima is joining us. So Purnima, it began as a call for justice for that student, the 17-year-old, and now it has taken this form across the state. Purnima, if you can hear me.
Well, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. So I'm saying that it began as a call for justice for that 17-year-old because of her alleged suicide note, and now we are seeing private school associations in Tamil Nadu announcing that all the schools will be shut. What exactly are these schools demanding?
Well, the parents and the relatives allege that there is foul play and that she could have been harassed by the two teachers, and even some of the alumni also from the same school had said that the girls are not safe and that the teachers had harassed. And these were the testimonies that came in, because of which we saw crowds swelling. And now every private school has decided to demand justice for girls students' safety because the parents allege foul play and says that their daughter could have been sexually harassed. So that's the claim that the parents had made. And on Wednesday also we saw family members, relatives, as well as the alumni students staging protests on the highway. And yesterday, because of the student communities now trying to send WhatsApp forwards, crowds, well, more than 1,000 people protested, and now they decided to ensure that till the two teachers who were named in the suicide note, till they are arrested, other schools have also now joined the protest and demanding justice for the girl. At the moment,
what we
only
are
3
told
arrests
is
have been made.
that the government has transferred the case to the CBCID, and the school principal and 2 school officials have been arrested already. This is certainly based on the suicide note, the alleged suicide note. But when you say the family is alleging foul play and this entire call for protests was given on social media, who gave the call for protests on social media? Which is this group?
Well, these were the student communities. The lawyer representing the girl had said that they did not call for yesterday's protest that turned violent. These were student communities trying to send WhatsApp forwards also to join in protests, and they had no idea that violence would erupt because the judge was not happy with the way things panned out yesterday, where more than 13 private buses were set on fire. There were incidents with stone pelting. Many have been injured. Therefore, the judge said that it appears to be an organized crime considering the kind of damages that were incurred after violence broke out yesterday. So at the moment, the judge had asked the police to form special teams and ensure that those who are behind these violent protests, they be identified at the earliest. Still, there's no clarity in terms of why protests turned violent, because many protesters say that they had come there to demand justice, but they started pelting stones, they set the buses on fire, and many cops were also injured in the process, which is why the judge said that those who are behind this organized crime should be arrested at the earliest. And parents said that they did not organize yesterday's protests, and these protesters came because of the WhatsApp messages that were forwarded amongst the students' community. That's what the lawyer representing the parents had told the judge at the Madras High Court earlier today.
All right, stay with us, Purnima, because the Madras High Court has now ordered the Tamil Nadu police to file a status report on July 29th. An order coming from the Madras High Court, which is hearing the petition of the girl's father. The Madras High Court has now told the Tamil Nadu police to file a status report on July 29th. Remember, on Sunday, around 2,000 people had gathered at the school where the class 12 student was found dead on Wednesday in response to a protest call that was made on social media by youth groups in the area. The student, 17-year-old, is suspected to have jumped to her death from the 3rd floor of the school building. The autopsy report confirmed injuries on the girl's body. The Madras High Court has also said that there will be second autopsy that will be conducted, and in that autopsy the girl's father and also the lawyer of her father could be present too. Purnima continues to be with us. Purnima, now the state police being told by the Madras High Court to file a status report on July 29th.
Absolutely. The judge, in fact, said that he was monitoring the kind of visuals and dramatic scenes unfold outside the school campus yesterday, and he believes that it's not just protesters trying to protest, demanding justice. It did not look like that was the reason why there were so many protesters. They've damaged, they vandalized properties, and they've also created violence there, which is why the judge has gone down heavily on these protesters, saying that those who are behind these should be identified at the earliest, and also wants special teams to be formed. In fact, asked the advocate representing the girl's family as to why these protests turned violent, for which the advocate representing the girl's family said that the father had no role in this, and they only staged protest on Wednesday, demanding justice and demanding re-postmortem of the girl's body. And the judge, taking cognizance of this, said that there will be a re-postmortem that will happen in the presence of a team of doctors which are appointed by the judge, and then they will be videographed. Also said the girl's father and the advocate can be present when the re-postmortem happens. That's the only observation that the judge made. But the judge came down heavily on these protesters because they in fact outnumbered the number of police personnel, and asked why so many protesters, because of the kind of videos that went viral on social media, more and more protesters joined, and the police were not able to bring the situation under control. The judge also said that there are trials going on social media. There are people who are trying to rake up this issue, and those people on social media who've been trying to provocate this entire protests, they should also be identified and be punished at the earliest. So these are the observations that the judge made because of the dramatic scenes that unfolded, where police officials were not able to control the situation. And after that, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister, after seeing the kind of violence that erupted there, also said that, also assured that action will be taken. However, 3 so far have been arrested in the case, which includes the principal and the secretary of the school as well. Maria.
Okay, let's listen in to some reactions, and I'm going to go back to Purnima. Remember, has been saying that it is the school that is much to explain, and the teachers of the 17-year-old had put pressure on her over her poor scores, and had also asked the school to refund her annual school fee to her parents as well. The letter allegedly blamed some of her teachers for putting her under pressure. That is the suicide note, the alleged suicide note of the 17-year-old. The family there alleging foul play, but it began as justice for the 17-year-old, but it turned into a violent protest on Sunday. The Madras High Court saying that there is much to it. It was not just a provocation or some kind of an instant gathering. There is a larger conspiracy behind it. Purnima Murli continues to be with us live from Chennai. Purnima, give us a sense of where it all began on Wednesday.
Well, on Tuesday, the girl was found dead and there was a postmortem conducted. On Wednesday, the autopsy report revealed that she died because of multiple hemorrhages, and also said that she could have died 36 hours before she was brought to the hospital. And this raised suspicions, and family members said that initially when they received a call from the school, they were only told that the girl was injured and was rushed to the hospital, while the girl had died the previous night. So this raised suspicions, and that's why our parents decided to stage protest. So family members, relatives gathered It was a small protest outside the hospital demanding a re-postmortem to be conducted to ensure that justice prevails in this case. And since Wednesday, there were no developments with regards to this story. But yesterday, more than 1,000 people had gathered outside the school premises, and more people started gathering there, and that outnumbered the number of police personnel who were deployed. They tried to push through the barricades. They were stopped by the police, and in turn they started pelting stones at the police officers, and then violence erupted. It was a riot-like situation yesterday outside the school premises, and more protesters started to join the crowd on social media too. There were many videos that went viral, and the judge had taken cognizance of this, saying this is not a normal protest. If they are only protesting, demanding justice for the girl, why did vandalism take place in the first place? Why did they set these private buses on fire? Why was the school property damaged? These are not something that normal protesters would do. This seems to be like an organized crime. These were the observations made by the judge, because yesterday for over 2 hours the violence erupted between these protesters and the police officers, and because the number of protesters outnumbered the police officers, they were not able to control the situation. Only by evening at around 4:30 p.m. did the police try to control the situation, and the area was cleared. But for over 2 hours, at around noon it began. It went on till about 3 p.m. where violence erupted. There were dramatic scenes that unfolded, and protesters stormed the entire school, and police were not able to control the situation. And that's why the judge said that, having watched the kind of scenes unfold outside the school, he thinks that it's an organized crime, and therefore the culprits who are behind the violent protests should be identified at the earliest, and that special teams should be formed. So these were the observations made by the judge, also assuring the family members that there will be a re-postmortem. But on Wednesday, when family members' relatives protested, it was only a small crowd outside the hospital. Yesterday, dramatic scenes unfolded. Many properties were damaged, and the judge said that this should be taken cognizance of, and everyone who's provocated in some way or the other, they should be arrested at the earliest, and that and also directed the Tamil Nadu police to file a status report soon.
Purnima, thank you so much for joining us. That remains our top focus here on CNN News 18. We are slipping into a short break. Lots more news and updates on the other side.
Now you can get a pre-approved personal loan in just 4 clicks with instant credit facility through YONO and without any branch visit. SMS to check eligibility today.
The government wants to make life simple for citizens using digital tools and technologies. That is the basic objective. And that is the framework in which most of the programs are being designed and developed. Creating digital inclusion, digital empowerment, and digital enablement is the motto and the principle on which most of the programs are being designed and developed.
New Citroën C3. Express your style.
अधिक से अधिक पाने का ख्वाब, अपेक्षाओं का दबाव, टेंशन को मिटाने में शिक्षा नहीं हो रही कामयाब। चाहे कोई मालामाल है पर नाखुश है तो कंगाल है। एक हंसी के लिए परेशान और बेहाल है। दिल्ली सरकार ने शुरू की एक पहल, नर्सरी से 8वीं तक हुई हैप्पीनेस क्लास की शुरुआत। तन से हैप्पी, मन से रहने की मिली सौगात। दिल्ली के सरकारी स्कूलों में होता 45 मिनट का हैप्पीनेस पीरियड। ध्यान के साथ सीखते बच्चे, मन को शांत करने का मतलब। पढ़ाई में लगता मन, तनाव और गुस्से में आ रही कमी। प्यार और अच्छे व्यवहार के बच्चे बन रहे धनी। यह है दिल्ली सरकार का हैप्पीनेस करिकुलम। बच्चे को रखता खुश, टेंशन करता कम।
दिल्ली के सरकारी स्कूलों में पिछले 4 साल से हैप्पीनेस क्लास चलाई जा रही है। बच्चे और टीचर्स बताते हैं कि हैप्पीनेस क्लास की वजह से बच्चे पढ़ाई पर फोकस करने लगे हैं और पेरेंट्स बताते हैं कि बच्चे अब उनकी ज़्यादा रिस्पेक्ट करने लगे हैं। हैप्पीनेस क्लास के 4 साल पूरे होने के मौके पर दिल्ली सरकार 14 जुलाई से 29 जुलाई तक हैप्पीनेस उत्सव मना रही है। आप भी अपने नज़दीकी स्कूल में आएँ और हैप्पीनेस उत्सव का हिस्सा बने।
मेरी कार का कितना मिल जाएगा?
यस सर, OLX ऑटोज ही देता है आपकी कार का बेस्ट प्राइस।
क्या बात कर रहे हो?
यही कि OLX ऑटोज ही देता है आपकी कार का बेस्ट प्राइस। ये प्राइस नहीं, सरप्राइज है।
क्या बात कर रहे हो?
विजिट olxautos.in now.
Lawrence Bishnoi, operating from inside the Tihar jail with impunity, had no qualms ordering multiple hits on Salman Khan.
The sculptor himself, the main man behind this, is saying that there is actually no difference.
Drugs to try and fund their terror operations and to also try and radicalize young impressionable minds while confining them to the throes of drug addiction.
What is becoming increasingly worrying and problematic is that issues related to education is becoming so polarizing. Now, a quick wrap of all that's making news throughout the country. The voting to choose the next president of India is underway in Parliament and other state assemblies. Chief ministers, including M.K. Stalin, Naveen Patnaik, Pushkar Dhami, Yogi Adityanath, and others have cast their votes so far.
ये कालखंड एक प्रकार से बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। राष्ट्रपति पद और उपराष्ट्रपति पद के चुनाव हो रहे हैं। आज मतदान भी हो रहा है।
The monsoon session of Parliament has begun. The Rajya Sabha chairman has sought a good session as a farewell gift to him. Opposition has listed 16 issues for the session today. The session will go on till 12th August, during which 32 bills are likely to be introduced.
सदन देश का नेतृत्व करे। सदन के सभी माननीय सदस्य राष्ट्र में नई ऊर्जा भरने के लिए निमित्त बने। उस अर्थ में ये सत्र भी बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। हम हमेशा
The President of India has accepted the resignation of Jagdeep Dhankar as the Governor of West Bengal. Remember, Mr. Dhankar has been chosen by the NDA as the Vice Presidential nominee. Manipur Governor La Ganesan is now appointed as the Bengal's Governor. Jagdeep Dhankar has been nominated as the NDA's nominee, as I just said. Protests against student suicide have turned violent in Tamil Nadu, with protesters torching school buses and police vehicles. A team of 500 police personnel led by A. Amal Raj is rushing to Kalakurchi to arrest those involved in the violence. Meanwhile, the Madras High Court has ordered Tamil Nadu police to file their status report on 29th of July. Heavy downpour continues to lash Karnataka, with the coastal areas being the worst hit. The Met Department has predicted thunderstorm at most places over coastal Karnataka and light rainfall in interior Karnataka. Between June 1st and July 17, the state has received 450 millimeter of rainfall as against the normal of 347 millimeters. Chhattisgarh Minister T.S. Singh Deo skipped the Congress legislature party meeting that was held at Chief Minister Bhupesh Bagel's residence yesterday. T.S. Singh cited pre-planned engagement as the reason for his absence from this meeting. Meanwhile, Bhupesh Baghel has said that he is yet to receive Singh's resignation from the Panchayat department. Senior Congress leader Siddaramaiah has strongly reiterated that the 2023 Assembly elections, that's next year, would be his last. He also said that he would not contest polls from his usual constituency, that is Chamundeshwari, but will be facing elections from another constituency.
I'm making it very, 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 very clear. Mere kadeyilla innaru nintikandre nilbeku andre niltini. Matte this is going to be my last election.
The Supreme Court will hear the pleas filed by Uddhav Thackeray and Eknath Shinde camps of the Shiv Sena regarding the Maharashtra political fiasco on 20th of July. The Thackeray camp claims that the Eknath Shinde-led government is illegal until the top court decides on disqualifications, and the rebels claim that they are the real Shiv Sena with an overwhelming majority of party MLAs with them. The Enforcement Directorate has summoned former Finance Minister of Kerala, Thomas Isaac, in connection with irregularities in the Kerala Infrastructure Investment Fund Board while accepting foreign funds. Union Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has alleged that there were FEMA Act violations while Isaac was the Finance Minister. 2 Pakistani drones were spotted near the international border in Chiliari and Regal areas of the Samba sector by locals. The drone was inside Indian territory for 10 to 15 minutes and was flying at a height of 400 feet and returned to the Pakistan side The armed forces have launched a search operation for the drones. Even as the dates for the Jammu and Kashmir elections are not announced, the Election Commission is gearing up to conduct polls in the state. Over 10,000 VVPAT machines were sent to the Union Territory. The machines have arrived in Jammu and Kashmir from Telangana, and the training to the election commissioners will be given from 25th July to the 27th.
While the Election Commission has not declared the dates when elections would be held in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, but days after the Election Commission told the Jammu and Kashmir Chief Electoral Officer to collect around 15,000 VVPAT machines from Hyderabad and Telangana, and you can see that these big containers, several of them, have arrived at the Nirvachan Bhavan here in Jammu and Kashmir.
Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha has announced a 10% reservation for Agniveers in Jammu and Kashmir Police. Some other states, including Haryana, have already announced a reservation for Agniveers in the state police, and several other departments as well. The Union Home Ministry has already announced similar reservations in paramilitary forces. Devotees offer prayers at Kashi Vishwanath Temple in Varanasi on the first Monday of Sawan month, the first Sawan Somvar, and the Mangal Gauri Vrat of Sawan month are considered to be the most important days for the Hindus. It is believed that people who fast on these days get blessings from Lord Shiva. Unknown assailants have attacked Samajwadi Party MLA Irfan Solanki's car in Kanpur. Whilst Irfan Solanki has claimed it is an assault on him, Kanpur police is speculating if this was a case of theft. The SP MLA was not present in the car when the assault took place. Delhi Lieutenant Governor has granted sanction to the CBI to prosecute Aam Aadmi Party MLA Amanatullah Khan in a case registered in 2016 over the alleged illegal appointment case. Prosecution sanction has also been granted against the Waqf Board CEO Mehboob Alam for offences including deliberate and criminal violation of rules, regulations and law, and also misuse of position and causing financial losses to the exchequer. The court will pronounce order on Ansal brothers' appeal on Upar fire tragedy. The Ansal brothers have filed a plea challenging their conviction and 7-year jail term for tampering with evidence in a case related to the 1997 Upahar cinema tragedy. The fire tragedy had claimed 59 lives. The GST rate hike has come into effect from today. The customers will have to pay 5% GST on pre-packed labelled food items like atta, paneer and curd from now on. The rate hike is also applied to hospital rooms with rents above 5,000 rupees. A piece of breaking news that is coming in now. 12 people have died and many injured after a bus fell from a bridge in Khalghat area. This is in Sanjay Setu. Rescue operation is currently underway. Nikhil Lakhwani is joining me on the phone line. Go ahead, Nikhil.
Well, Mara, as per the details, 12 people have been killed in this unfortunate incident. So as per the further details, we have been told that the bus was moving all the way from Indore city towards Pune in Maharashtra, and the place where the incident has taken place, it falls in the Khargone district. The proper location is the Khalghat, but what we have been told to understand is that a bus with close to 40 people, it has fallen into the Narmada river. It was going towards the Maharashtra side, and as per the officials, many of the senior officials are there currently at the spot. The Home Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Nalka Mishra, is closely monitoring the situation, but we have been told is that 12 people at least they have been killed after the bus has fallen into the Narmada river. Even the statement has come out from Chief Minister office, Shiv Sena Chauhan. He has condemned the unfortunate incident, and also we have been told that the senior officials of NDRF, they are at the ground zero. The rescue operations are underway. There is a team of NDRF which has been deployed there, and this is the proper location which we can call it Agra-Bombay Expressway. So all the way it was moving from Indore city, it was going via Khargone district towards Pune in Maharashtra. But this unfortunate incident has now taken place. 12 people unfortunately have been killed in this incident.
All right, Nikhil, thank you so much for joining us. And that's all from me. Arunima is here in the studio to take the news and updates forward. Arunima, over to you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Good morning. I am Arunima. You're watching CNN News 18, where the top focus remains the votes that all our legislators, the MPs and MLAs, are casting. The President of India's election is underway. We'll get you details on that story. But first, let me take you to Tamil Nadu. The Madras High Court has outlined its order on the death of a schoolgirl that has sent shockwaves across the state. As per the order, another autopsy will be conducted. A special team will also be formed to identify the accused, and the court will be monitoring the probe into the violence that took place yesterday. Section 144 is in place in Tamil Nadu's Kalakkurichi. If you recall, yesterday protests broke out, buses were vandalized and a lathi charge took place as well. The 12th standard girl who died on 13th of July had levelled allegations of mental torture by her teachers. 2 AIADMK IT wing members have been arrested for allegedly instigating the violence. So what really is happening on the ground there? Purnima Murli, my colleague, is keeping an eye. I'm hoping she'll join me just a bit, but just to give you a recap, the Madras High Court has come down heavily on what has happened there in terms of the protests. The High Court has also wondered, and this is an allegation which is doing the round, if these protests were spontaneous or there was somebody who was instigating the protesters. If you see the pictures on your screen, the way the violence was carried out, yes, there was anger over the student's death, the death of that girl in Tamil Nadu, but suspicion still whether the kind of vandalism that we saw, like the pictures on your screen, are telling you whether this was all spontaneous or it was orchestrated. Now, like I told you, 2 people associated with the AIADMK, the principal opposition party in Tamil Nadu, they are associated with the IT wing of the AIADMK. They are under the scanner for their role as far as this violence is concerned. The Madras High Court has also said that they are going to look at the probe in this matter. But most importantly, the autopsy of the girl has to be reconducted as per the High Court order. The father and the legal representative, the lawyer of the family, can be present when the autopsy is conducted. A special team is also going to be formed to identify the accused, and all of this will be court monitored. Section 144 continues to be in place at the Kalakkurichi area of Tamil Nadu, where this violence broke out. And why did all of this happen? Because this girl, this 12th standard girl who who passed away on 13th of July, leveled allegations of mental torture by her teachers. Were the allegations right or wrong? Was any disciplinary action taken? Any step taken after the girl complained? What really forced her into taking this extreme step? What is it that the family suspects? All of that is now in the realm of judicial scrutiny. For more on that, let me bring in Purnima Murli. Purnima, if you could just recap for us the situation at ground zero and the suspicion that this was orchestrated.
Well, the situation continues to remain tense. While the area has been cleared and the situation is under control, tense situation prevails because there's heavy police deployment outside the school premises. And currently, the judge has also come down heavily on the protesters, saying that this does not look like a normal protest. It appears to be an organized crime, and also said that special teams should be formed to identify those who plant these violent protests and take action, stringent action against them, adding that those who are also doing these parallel trials on social media groups, they should also be identified, action should be taken against them. And the judge said that he was witnessing the drama unfold at the school premises while he was sitting at home and watching television channels, and said that it certainly appears to not be a normal protest, and it seems that there are people who've planned these really well, considering that the girl had died on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the family members, relatives, alumni of the school, all of them staged a small protest. The family alleges foul play because they say that they were not informed that the girl passed away. They got a call, they said that the girl was injured, and when they went to the hospital, they realized that the girl was already brought dead and the school did not reveal the truth. And the post-mortem report also highlights that because of multiple hemorrhages, the girl died, and said that she could have died 36 hours prior to arriving at the hospital. They say that there should be another post-mortem report and that the truth should prevail. The judge, taking cognizance of the request, had ordered a re-postmortem and said that the girl's father, the advocate, can also be present when the re-postmortem happens, and said that the entire postmortem process can be videographed. The judge requested the family to collect the body and not create further trouble, and also wants the Tamil Nadu police to file a status report on what really happened and how these protests turned violent.
Right. Do hold on there, Purnima. Our colleague Ritu is in fact at ground zero, joining us live from the Kalakurchi district where this entire vandalism originated. Ritu, if you can hear me, Purnima was just recapping for us what led to this kind of protest, this kind of violent protest that we saw. As far as the school's role is concerned, what is being alleged?
So yes, the violence that turned out to be very much violent on Sunday. You see now the section 144 has been imposed in the Kalaburchi, and to ensure that things are being moved in a peace manner. But of course there was a huge violence that we got to see. But on a side, as Purnima mentioned, that a family is saying that it was only on the Wednesday where the family members have staged the protest, and later point they were nowhere to be part of this violence, the protest in fact. But now what exactly triggered this violence is something that has been questioned from the judge as well. Now you see the family on side being clear, but on the other side it is a specific question that has been made to the state government of what has triggered this incident and the violence that had taken place, where you see the vandalism has been on the campus, where almost the principal cabin in fact was also been disrupted. So a lot of that kind of damage that has been made on the premises is something that has been questioned now. But of course the section 144 is imposed to ensure that things are in a peace going peacefully and nothing is to take place in a wrong manner. So that is something that has been ensured on the ground level, but we'll have to wait and see what exactly the new twist and turns this in fact the case will take in the coming days.
But right now it's all calm, all quiet at ground zero. Section 144 continues.
Yes, Section 144 continues, but the police is, of course, has ensured that things, are in a hand, and because now that state government has also been taken at a stake by the government, by the judge himself, and who's questioned, often about the ground level situation that had taken place yesterday. What triggered it to be that violent is a bigger question. But of course, now the judge saying about the formation of the special investigation team to understand what exactly went wrong and what triggered this whole incident, because if state continues to witness such kind of incidents, it's no good for anyone. And of course, you see the judge also coming down heavily and questioning that whether the state is running lawlessly. So that is something, a bigger question that the judge has also made. Now with that, of course, you see police, more police in fact has been deployed on the ground level to ensure that things are all right, and seems to be good now.
Right. Purnima, like Ritu is reporting, police has taken extra precautions, extra steps to ensure that at ground zero peace prevails. But do you see the impact of this incident on the rest of the state?
Well, interestingly, yesterday the ADMK IT wing had tweeted that 2 members of the AIADMK have been arrested for provocation, and they said that this is something that the DMK is doing to tarnish the image of the AIADMK. 2 members of the ADMK were arrested late last evening for, in fact, trying to trigger the entire protests. That was the reason that was given, and the ADMK has now raked up this issue, saying that the 2 arrested are nowhere at fault, and that this is something that the DMK is using as a cover-up and to tarnish the image of the ADMK. However, so far, after the violent protests ended, after the situation was under control, after more police officials were deployed at the site, what happened was 3 of them were arrested late last evening. It included the school principal and the school secretary also. Only after these protests were the first round of arrests made with regards to the school management. Remember, a suicide note was reportedly found where the girl had in fact said that there were 2 teachers who in fact tortured her, and that's why she is taking this drastic step. So far, no action was taken. Only after protests yesterday, even though it was violent, the first arrests were made with regards to the school management. So in a way, parents now say that the 2 teachers who were named by their daughter, they should be arrested, and that's how justice will prevail. However, the judge now says that the police team will now focus more on the protesters, and then also wait for the post-mortem reports to be out to decide what next. However, the focus now is to identify those who created vandalism there and who also damaged the properties, including torching 13 private buses, pelting stones at the police officers, and also damaging police vans. So focus now is to identify these protesters, and the judge says that that from now on, if there is any such report that happens in any of the educational institutions, the case should immediately be handed over to the CBCID, and there should be a team of doctors who will conduct post-mortem in a fair and transparent way. So from now on, whenever there are such incidents reported, the CBCID should then handle the case. That was also the order that was dictated by the Madras High Court. Meanwhile, other private schools also have now joined these protests by saying that they will boycott till there's some sort of safety, there's some sort of arrest made as far as the girls' families' allegations are concerned. The teachers should be arrested. Till then, other private schools have also joined in protest, saying they will not, the schools will remain shut till justice prevails. So many people are joining in protests, but those are peaceful protests that happened. Only yesterday we saw how dramatic scenes unfold and how
we're cutting to the Parliament premises. You can see members of Parliament there. Ravi Kishan is visible there. I think Prime Minister is also awaited. You can see other opposition members. Sharad Yadav is visible on screen, as are other members of Parliament. This is the election for the post of the President of India that is happening. That is, the voting is happening currently, and in a short while from now, the NDA's vice presidential nominee, former West Bengal Governor Mr. Dhankar is also going to file his nomination. The opposition, of course, has pitched Margaret Alva. So it's Dhankar versus Alva. Both have a Rajasthan connection. Both have been former governors. And now you can see the Prime Minister walking in, greeting the members of Parliament there from the NDA side as voting gets underway, voting for the position of President of India. MPs are voting in the Parliament complex. There are ballot boxes set up at various legislative assemblies as well across the country, so that the votes can be cast in 3 days' time. It will be clear, it's all but clear now, given the stance that parties have taken. Parties like Shiv Sena, like YSRCP, AIADMK, BJD, even JAMM, which is supposed to be with the opposition side, they've all given their support, declared their support for Droupadi Murmu. So it's all but clear as to who is going to be the next President of India. But the process is still being followed. The Prime Minister is at the Parliament complex, and while the presidential vote happens, next up is the nomination process for the vice presidential candidate, and that will that nomination from the vice presidential nominee will happen from Mr. Dhankar, the former West Bengal governor. So those are the visuals that are coming in from the Parliament House complex. Earlier in the day, the Prime Minister also spoke about this session. The Parliament session has begun, and the Prime Minister expressed hope that this will be a productive session, even though the opposition has made it clear that on issues like Agni Path, on issues like GST, they are going to make life difficult. Already, I think Rajya Sabha has seen an adjournment for the day on the issue of GST. That's the information that Pallavi Ghosh brought for us, tracking the Parliament proceedings very closely. I'm hoping she'll join me in just a bit. Okay, Pallavi is here with me. Pallavi, over to you. Just talk us through what's happening inside the Parliament House.
So both the houses of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha have been adjourned. Arunima, Rajya Sabha till tomorrow, Lok Sabha till 2 p.m. There's one bill, of course, which is slated and on the agenda as far as Lok Sabha goes. But so very clearly, the government does want to get all the bills passed as soon as possible inside Parliament. Well, the day began the way it usually begins. I mean, the Prime Minister appealing to the opposition, saying that this is a glorious monsoon session because of two reasons. Because it's going to be in the midst of the 75th India's independence, but more importantly, he also said the presidential and the vice presidential elections. But just moments inside the house, you had Lok Sabha, the opposition, of course, raising hangama. In Rajya Sabha, they raised objections to a GST. They demanded that the Prime Minister needs to come to Rajya Sabha, needs to speak to the speakers, and then the result, of course, it has been adjourned. So I suspect that's what will happen pretty much through the entire monsoon session, because it began really on the note also, Arunima, where the opposition feels that their voice is being muzzled, not being allowed to carry on dharnas and demonstrations, despite a clarification coming in from the government, and the speaker also not being allowed to use certain words. And as far as the opposition goes, they want the Agni Path scheme to be discussed, to be removed. They also want a discussion on the GST, price rise, so on and so forth. And the government is very clear on one, that come what may, we have to get the bills passed.
And as far as the vice presidential election process goes, that is also being set underway with the nomination papers being filed. What is the process to be followed? How soon will the new vice president take charge? Will it be in this session itself?
Yes, it is expected to be in this session itself. See, the presidential counting is on the 21st. The vice president is after that. So the new vice president, we do expect, because this is a long session. This is almost a month-long session. So the procedure is actually been set rolling. The Prime Minister there, and flanked by the senior ministers of the Union Cabinet, all of them there very much overseeing the nomination process. We are going to also have, for example, Margaret Alva, who's the opposition's candidate, also filing her nomination through. For Jagdeep Dhankar, it's again going to be a cakewalk. We already saw, for example, yesterday, the AIADMK, YSR Congress already pledging their support. So in terms of sheer numbers, nothing to worry about. I think it's going to be a nice political game and a match which is going to be watched out. As we've been pointing out really, Arunima, guess who's going to be sitting across Jagdeep Dhankar? Is going to be a Trinamool Congress's Derek O'Brien. Maybe a slice of Bengal's politics of confrontation will also be seen inside Rajya Sabha, and Jagdeep Dhankar's legacy, or I would say his experience as an administrator, as a governor, and also as a lawyer, I think the task is cut out for him to ensure that despite the fact that the government doesn't have those kind of numbers which the opposition has in Rajya Sabha, he's able to keep the agenda together to ensure that the bills are passed and the House is in order.
Given the TMC-Dhankar equation, Pallavi, I found it interesting that yesterday when the opposition announced Margaret Alva as their candidate, TMC was not part of that meeting.
Yes, but the TMC also issued a clarification after that by saying that 21st July is their martyrdom day. It's actually a very big day as far as the Trinamool Congress is concerned, because that's the day which they declare as the founding day. And it's only after that there is going to be a meeting which has been called urgently by Mamata Banerjee, and they're going to make their point of view across whom they're going to support. When we do speak to TMC sources, they are insisting that Margaret Alva does have the credentials. She's a woman, she's a former minister, former governor, she belongs to the minority community from Karnataka, and also and South. She represents South. So the TMC certainly wants to send out a message that our absence should not be seen as our defend of the BJP's candidate.
Right. Pallavi, we will come back to you, but Arvind Kejriwal is also speaking. He's already crossed horns with the central government on the issue of his visit to Singapore. Is he mentioning that issue? Let's listen in.
स्वतंत्र आज़ाद नागरिकों मुझे वहाँ जाने से क्यों रोका जा रहा है, मेरी समझ के बाहर है। और मैं समझता हूँ कि वहाँ पे दुनिया भर के बहुत बड़े बड़े नेता आ रहे हैं सिंगापुर में, और सिंगापुर की सरकार ने स्पेशली मुझे बुलाया है। दिल्ली में शिक्षा और स्वास्थ्य के ऊपर जो क्रांति हुई है और दिल्ली में अलग अलग क्षेत्रों में जो तरक्की हुई है, दिल्ली मॉडल के बारे में वहाँ पे प्रस्तुत करने के लिए, तो पूरी दुनिया के लीडर्स जो हैं वो दिल्ली मॉडल के बारे में सुनेंगे। और तो ये इससे देश का गौरव बढ़ेगा, इससे देश का नाम होगा। दिल्ली मॉडल की चर्चा आप लोग जानते हैं पूरी दुनिया में हो रही है। जब ट्रंप साहब आए थे, उनकी वाइफ मिलेनिया ट्रंप ने भी दिल्ली के स्कूलों के
So like I was highlighting, Arvind Kejriwal once again mentioning that issue of him not being given the permission by the central government to travel to Singapore. There is a conference there where the Chief Minister of Delhi has been invited to speak about the Delhi model, he says, and his party colleague, Member of Parliament Sanjay Singh, in fact, has given a notice for discussion on this as to why the Chief Minister of Delhi is being denied a chance to travel abroad and showcase the capital city's model of governance. We have not heard from the central government yet whether this is an issue and why this is an issue. But in the past, other chief ministers, especially the likes of Mamata Banerjee, have time and again accused the central government of not allowing opposition MPs to travel abroad, specifically when she wanted to travel to Rome and the Vatican. Mamata had raised the issue then. Now Arvind Kejriwal is also asking the government to clarify. So far, we have not heard from the central government, waiting to know whether there will be a clarification or whether permissions will be given. But while we are talking about that, on your screens are pictures of Prime Minister's arrival. This is the library complex inside the Parliament larger premises, where I think the nomination papers for the vice presidential candidate of NDA are to be filed in just a bit. That's the vice presidential nominee. Home Minister is greeting him after declaring Mr. Dhankar, the former governor of West Bengal, will now be the vice president of India. If the election process goes off smoothly, by all account, he will be the next vice president because he has the numbers. Just as Droupadi Murmu, as NDA's presidential candidate, has enlisted the support of even non-NDA parties like the AIADMK, like the BJD, YSRCP, JMM. Similarly, it looks like for Mr. Dhankar also these parties are on board. His on the other side of the spectrum is Margaret Alva, long-time Congress loyalist, a former governor, a woman, and the opposition has decided that Mr. Dhankar will have to compete for votes with Ms. Alva there, but it looks like a one-sided fight at the moment. Like I said, non-NDA parties too have ensured support to Mr. Dhankar. On the right, the visuals are of members of Parliament of NDA greeting the Prime Minister as the Parliamentary Affairs Ministers flank him as he makes his way towards the hall where the process for the Vice Presidential elections will get underway. Pallavi Ghosh is still with me, tracking these very closely. Pallavi, as we see these pictures of the red carpet being laid out for the next Vice President of the country, let's talk about the legacy of the outgoing one. Venkaiah Naidu, as Vice President, as Chairperson of Rajya Sabha, he tried to take everybody along, but one of the key legacies he leaves behind is the fact that a lot of opposition MPs were actually suspended, not for 1 day, not for 2 days, for rest of the session as well, in some cases, accusations of vandalism and bringing the upper house into disrepute.
It's very interesting when you say that, Arunima, because I was reading many of the rich tributes which were being paid to him, and one of them actually came in from the Congress's Jairam Ramesh, and essentially they were talking in the context of a dinner meeting, and he did mention the fact that we are really going to miss Venkaiah Naidu inside the house. I think moving beyond that acrimony which they faced inside the house, there was a kind of a personal connect many of the senior leaders across the opposition parties did have with Venkaiah Naidu, because he's been around for a long time, he's a veteran, then his amicable style, his one-liners, I think those clicked. But yes, you're right, it's certainly going to be something which the opposition is always going to remind Venkaiah Naidu and the government of. And that's the reason why the opposition parties have often said that Venkaiah Naidu only ended up becoming a rubber stamp. He didn't get to exercise a mind of its own, and he was doing what his bosses, to use the words of the opposition, were asking him to do. And this is also again very interesting in the context of a recent controversy which arose over no dharnas, demonstrations being allowed within the premises of Parliament. And despite the fact this is something which has been a part of the rule book ever since independence and across parties which are in power at the centre. And that's exactly what the opposition's complaint has been. If you remember, and you were there, I remind the last session of Parliament, almost the entire session you did have a large number of opposition MPs, whether it's the Congress, whether it's the TMC, actually sitting outside a Mahatma Gandhi statue or beside him, and also having the meals through the day, sitting there from morning to evening. So is this going to be a kind of a legacy he leaves behind, which is going to be pushed forward by Jagdeep Dhankar? Well, within the opposition corridors, I can only say this much, that this is exactly what they're apprehensive are about. They feel that this is exactly what he's going to do. In fact, one of those members also told me, we think he's going to be a step ahead.
In fact, I was just coming to that. Venkaiah Naidu has a very good equation when he's not occupying that chair with the opposition benches. Harivansh, the deputy chairperson, has an excellent equation. In fact, he's considered somebody who has been, so to say, soft and not so harsh. But then he was in the chair when the first instance of suspension of MPs in Rajya Sabha was brought about. Jagdeep Dhankar has already had constant run-ins with the Trinamool Congress, one of the lead players in the opposition benches in Rajya Sabha. He has been accused of being a political person, of behaving like a quote-unquote agent of the Bharatiya Janata Party in the governor's position. Given that background, the opposition, like you are saying, is only expecting things to go downhill from here on?
Yes, at least the Trinamool Congress is, and the Trinamool Congress, of course, also going to seize a political opportunity in it. And as Trinamool Congress MPs are telling many of them in the opposition parties that now you're going to see it for yourself, the points that we would often raise. Look, Jagdeep Dhankar was one who would always play that moral card in West Bengal, always writing letters, confronting Mamata Banerjee, saying that, poll violence, some policy decisions, they were not in sync with what the culture and ethos of Bengal should be all about. And he would actually dare to take on Mamata Banerjee when she was kind of used to perhaps not this kind of an open daring by anyone sitting in Raj Bhavan. Though I remember she did have a run-in with Narayanan when he was there for a brief spell over there in Raj Bhavan. But, having said that, I think the opposition camp is actually bracing themselves up for a big fight in Rajya Sabha. It already has been won. And if you look at what happened today, I mean, just when Venkaiah Naidu was actually reading out the rule book, he was talking about, the names he was rattling off of members and new members. The opposition was actually creating a hangama over issues like the GST.
Right. Pallavi, do hold on. We are discussing the vice presidential nomination, but the other big event that is happening in the Parliament building is the elections, the voting for the next president of India. History is being written as we speak. The presidential polls are currently underway and the country's MLAs and MPs are casting their votes for the two candidates in the fray. It's the NDA's Droupadi Murmu versus the UPA's Yashwant Sinha. Before he cast his vote, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that an important era was about to begin. Voting will conclude at 5 p.m. this evening, and some very interesting twists have emerged in this elections after the BJP announced a tribal face as its candidate, with several parties that would have stood against the NDA lending their support instead. The counting of votes will take place on 21st of July, and the country's next president will be sworn in on the 25th of July. If you recall, current President Ramnath Kovind's 5-year tenure will end on 24th of this month.
ये कालखंड एक प्रकार से बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। राष्ट्रपति पद और उपराष्ट्रपति पद के चुनाव हो रहे हैं। आज मतदान भी हो रहा है और इसी कालखंड में देश को नए राष्ट्रपति, नए उपराष्ट्रपति उनका मार्गदर्शन प्रारंभ होगा। मैं सभी आदरणीय सांसदों से यही आग्रह करूंगा कि गहन चिंतन, गहन चर्चा, उत्तम चर्चा और सदन को हम जितना ज्यादा प्रोडक्टिव बना सके, सदन को जितना ज्यादा फ्रूटफुल बना सके, उसलिए सबका सहयोग हो और सबके प्रयास से ही लोकतंत्र चलता है।
So while the Prime Minister said history is being made, the opposition candidate Yashwant Sinha is not too happy with the way things are going. He in fact alleged that money is playing a role in these polls. Listen in.
मैं एक पॉलिटिकल लड़ाई ही नहीं लड़ रहा हूं। आप सब जानते हैं कि मैं सरकारी एजेंसियों के खिलाफ भी लड़ाई लड़ रहा हूं। इसमें सरकारी एजेंसियां बहुत सक्रिय हो गई हैं और राजनीतिक दलों में तोड़फोड़ करवाने का काम कर रही हैं। लोगों को
Right, on your screen, visuals of the vice presidential nominee of NDA getting ready to file his nomination papers. You can see the Prime Minister, the Defence Minister, the President of the Bharatiya Janata Party, and also if you look behind Mr. Dhankar, BJD's Pinaki Mishra is also visible. Why that is significant, Nitin Gadkari too, why the presence of Pinaki Mishra was just walking out of the frame is significant is because BJD waited to know who the opposition's vice presidential candidate is going to be and then came out and declared its support to Mr. Dhankar. The nomination papers there being filed. Anupriya Patel, the other ally and also Parliamentary Affairs Minister, Agriculture Minister. So the full display of strength there as the papers are being filed by the former West Bengal Governor Jagdeep Dhankar for the position of Vice President. As the Vice President of India, he will not only be, the number 2 as far as the topmost constitutional position is concerned, he will also chair the Rajya Sabha, the upper house, which has been the center for a lot of acrimony. Pallavi Ghosh is with me. Pallavi, we are seeing these pictures. The Prime Minister himself present there, the Raksha Mantri present there, the other alliance partners. So it's a show of strength really as the nomination papers for Mr. Jagdeep Dhankar get filed.
But naturally it will be a show of strength because obviously they're going to flaunt the fact that they have chosen someone who is also going to make a very deep political message and also someone who's already started getting support from other political parties. I mean, you mentioned the BJD, but yesterday we saw a statement from the AIA-DMK. We also saw a statement which came in from YSR Congress already pledging their support for Jagdeep Dhankar. So in terms of sheer numbers, it's never been a problem. But I think the story is beyond the numbers. The story is the break in opposition unity, showing how fragile it is. The story is also about the fact that whether there's going to be a certain amount of cross-voting which is going to take place. Jagdeep Dhankar, we've always been putting out his bio. He's a lawyer. He's been a governor, of course. He is a governor of West Bengal. He's an administrator. He has that kind of an experience. He's also supposed to have a very good sense of humor. So he just carries on the legacy of Venkaiah Naidu over there. And certainly in him, the BJP hopes to see a semblance of order in Rajya Sabha, or at least if not that order, at least to try and send out this message to the opposition that they cannot run the Rajya Sabha Sabha, the upper house, just because they have more numbers than the government. At the end of the day, critical bills will have to be passed. And that is something which Jagdeep Dhankar is going to be his biggest challenge.
Right. Maria Shakil, our political editor, also with us. Maria, what ultimately went in favour of Jagdeep Dhankar? We had heard all kinds of names, from Arif Mohammad Khan to Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi to even perhaps a Sikh candidate. But ultimately, Jagdeep Dhankar's choice. Were you surprised? Why him?
Yes. Yes, Arunima, did come as a surprise to many, but that is quintessential BJP, where they have political calculations which are very difficult to decipher in many ways. As far as Jagdeep Dhankar's nomination or name is concerned, we heard what Mr. Nadu, who is the BJP president, had to say, that he is the Kisan Putra. That is the way he introduced him in that press conference that was held soon after the BJP Parliamentary board got over. So the message in this is that Jagdeep Dhankar stood with the BJP central leadership, even as the governor of Bengal. There are, speculation of some secret meeting that took place between Himanta Biswa Sarma, Mamata Banerjee, and Mr. Dhankar in Darjeeling as well before the name was announced. But I think it's less about symbolism here, Arunima. It's not about any first as far as Mr. Dhankar is concerned. He, of course, upheld the important constitution office as the governor of West Bengal. He was very vociferous in his objections to Mamata Banerjee's policies and also post-poll violence that unfolded in Bengal. But he's also seen as someone who stood his ground. So did that go in his favor? Because as far as running the upper house of parliament, the Rajya Sabha is concerned, it is about the challenges, also about to reaching out to the other side, reaching not just ensuring that the opposition is on board, but ensuring that the house functions. So that is the big challenge for Jagdeep Dhankar. So I think it's more to do with political calculation. Does the BJP understand here that going forward, the TMC number in the Rajya Sabha is going to increase, and Mr. Dhankar understands how the TMC as a political party functions, and he will be able to counter their belligerence and ensure that the House functions. So I think it's more to do with political calculation and less to do with symbolism as far as the nomination of Jagdeep Dhankar is concerned. But on our television screens, the entire strength of the NDA, the top leaders of the BJP, along with the Prime Minister, Home Minister Amit Shah, the BJP president present in that nomination, also Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and NDA allies, Apna Dal chief, you can see all of them present in that nomination paper which has been filed by Jagdeep Dhankar right now in Parliament of India.
Right, but I just saw the Prime Minister also sign some papers. He's being the proposer. The significance of that, Prime Minister of India signing the papers, the nomination papers for the vice presidential candidate?
Yes, Arunima, we have seen that as well in the case of Droupadi Murmu. The Prime Minister was the first proposer, and he accompanied all the other party leaders, top ministers, and NDA allies. All of them were present when the nomination of Droupadi Murmu was filed, and now we are seeing the Prime Minister being the first proposer also in the case of Jagdeep Dhankar. So the message certainly is that in his selection also, the name being proposed, the Prime Minister has played an important role. But Arunima, yes, it did come as a surprise because everybody was trying to guess whether the nomination of the vice president as far as the NDA is concerned, will it be high on symbolism? This is not high on symbolism, but I think this is pure political calculations, keeping in mind that TMC's numerical strength in the Rajya Sabha and also understanding fully well the role that was played by Jagdeep Dhankar as the governor of West Bengal.
Right. Maria, do hold on. I'm also hoping Pallavi will be back with us. But Siddhant Mishra is also live with me from Vijayachauk. Siddhant, we're still seeing the visuals of the nomination papers being proposed, being processed. With this, the vice presidential elections will also be set in motion. But on the other hand, the opposition candidate, Ms. Alva, is also expected to file her papers today itself. If you can fill us in on the challenges of Jagdeep Dhankar.
Well, that's correct. And you see, these are the two latest announcements made by Bharatiya Janata Party. One, picking Ms. Murmu for the president's post and Jagdeep Dhankar for vice president's post. Now, both have served as governors of two various states of the country, and both have been rewarded both have been rewarded by party for being people's governor. These both Mr. Dhankar and Ms. Murmu were against, could be seen against the incumbent government. Mr. Murmu refused to sign two acts which were passed by Raghubar Das government in 2016, and Jagdeep Dhankar is somebody seen as people's governor because he is someone who has always spoken against Mamata Banerjee's administration, and in fact, you know, both you know, Raj Bhavan and Mamata Banerjee's office you know, always were at loggerheads with each other as far as issues of West Bengal is concerned.
So I have to interject,
you know,
because we are just seeing visuals of the nomination process being completed. The visuals on your screen, Prime Minister shaking the hands of the Vice Presidential nominee Jagdeep Dhankar. He accepting the greetings from all present. It's a big moment, Pallavi, for Jagdeep Dhankar, from the governor of West Bengal to the journey of being the Vice President, the chairperson of Rajya Sabha as well. We have been discussing why Jagdeep Dhankar. One of the factors that have also been mentioned perhaps is the Rajasthan poll politics. He coming from a Jat background.
Yes, he's a Jat leader from Rajasthan. That's also going to be one messaging. Apart from the permutations and combinations inside, you know, inside the Rajya Sabha, you know, the BJP is pretty confident of Rajasthan, but you know, that's the way the BJP works. The BJP doesn't want to leave any stone unturned. There were many during UP elections who were actually speculating that the Jats would turn their back to them because of the farm laws, agitation, so on and so forth. And we saw what happened with the results. They also want the same kind of a calculation to also work out as far as Rajasthan goes, and therefore the choice of Jagdeep Dhankar, a Jat leader from Rajasthan, is also very interesting. Also very interesting, if I may add over here, is that Margaret Alva also has been a governor of Rajasthan, and she of course comes from Karnataka, where again the BJP versus Congress battle is pretty fierce over there. But just to come back to the importance of Jagdeep Dhankar, it just goes on to show that when the BJP chooses a particular name, they also want to send out a deep down political message. In the case of Droupadi Murmu, we know the kind of messaging they are trying to send out. But when they choose Jagdeep Dhankar, it also goes on to show that a confrontation we often saw between him and West Bengal government did have the tacit support coming in from the center, because the BJP has repeatedly made the point that when it comes to post-poll violence in West Bengal, when it comes to targeting of the BJP leaders in West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee has done nothing much to it. In fact, she's actually encouraged it. And every time Jagdeep Dhankar would fly down to Delhi, and you know that he, when you cover the Home Ministry, the kind of complaints which would go to and come from the Home Ministry, that's where Jagdeep Dhankar played a very critical role. I don't think it's fair to say his performance inside Rajya Sabha is going to be restricted only to between him and the TMC. I mean, you know, when you sit on that chair, your task is cut out. You have to ensure there's a semblance of order in the House, bills are passed. Venkaiah Naidu, in fact, today also talked about the way one needs to conduct the House and the things which every member of Parliament has to do. I think Jagdeep Dhankar will send out that very firm message because of the kind of experience and the eyeballs he grabbed in West Bengal, that I'm going to be firm on this. I'm going to try and show the mirror to the members of Parliament, which also could mean that there would be a full-on confrontation between the opposition and the new Vice President.
So just to take on that, before I let you go, already day one of this session, adjournment right at the beginning in Upper House, when Jagdeep Dhankar takes that chair, like you were pointing out, Venkaiah Naidu, irrespective of the legacy that he's leaving behind about suspension, has only heard good things from the opposition benches. Jagdeep Dhankar, when he comes in, will he be greeted with that kind of affection, with that kind of respect, or is he just looking at a roller coaster ride ahead?
I think in respect, of course, yes, because at the end of the day, he's the chair and you have to respect the chair. That's parliamentary norm and they're going to welcome him on that. Whether they are going to love him or they're going to like him, well, I don't think that word can be used for the Trinamool Congress, certainly. Which is why I think there could be a slice or a reflection of the politics we saw of confrontation in West Bengal very much there in Rajya Sabha. I mean, if the Vice President is going to take shots at the Trinamool Congress, there's going to be a very strong rebuttal from them. And I'm sure Derek O'Brien is going to use every opportunity, just as his party colleagues will be, to try and remind Jagdeep Dhankar how he misused his chair, to use the words of the TMC, while he was the governor of West Bengal. Look, a certain amount of confrontation always takes place between the chair and whoever sits in the opposition. It was there during the UPA times. It's become acrimonious even more so. And I think the way the day began today in Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, but more in Rajya Sabha because over there it was very, very, fierce, I would say, just goes on to show in Rajya Sabha the opposition gets its strength from its numbers. I mean, till now the numbers are certainly more than that of the BJP. And therefore, I think they're going to try and use every opportunity to try and hit back at the BJP and the Prime Minister specifically.
All right. Pallavi Ghosh, Siddhant and Maria, thank you so much for joining us. We will continue to keep our focus on what's happening there inside the Parliament House. But let's shift focus to Maharashtra politics. News just comes in. Aditya Thackeray has reiterated that the Shiv Sena will back NDA candidate Murmu for president. Droupadi Murmu will be Shiv Sena's pick, is what Aditya Thackeray says. Listen.
आज जो राष्ट्रपति महोदय की चुनाव है उसमें हमने शिवसेना पक्ष का जो है समर्थन पूरा मुर्मू जी के साथ दिया है। हमें यही लगता है कि प्रेसिडेंशियल पोल्स एक कहीं भी कोई भी राजकीय चुनाव से अलग होते हैं। ये सर्वोच्च पद है और यहाँ एक उचित व्यक्ति को ही मतदान होना चाहिए और इसलिए आज हमने ये निर्णय लिया है।
So Aditya Thackeray there reiterating that the Thackeray faction of Shiv Sena will give its vote in favour of Droupadi Murmu. Siddhant Mishra still joining me live from Vijay Chowk. Siddhant, no surprise there. This has been decided, announced earlier, but on the eve of the ballot being cast, for Aditya Thackeray to come and underline it, significant?
Well, very significant, but yes, in fact, in past also we saw that how Balasaheb Thackeray has extended support for Pranab Mukherjee, and in fact Shiv Sena has also backed Pratibha Patil for the post of president. So this is not new that Shiv Sena is not going with the ally partners and supporting the other side.
Right.
But thinking about the politics behind this very decision, very important politics is being played by Shiv Sena. First, if JMM comes out and support Droupadi Murmu, then there is a reason that they have a Adivasi cadre. Shiv Sena as such doesn't have Adivasi cadre in Maharashtra. They are mostly an urban party. If they are doing this, then reason is that they don't want a divide should reflect in a party, because once they will go with the other candidate, Shinde camp will support the other candidate. So the divide will be visible. B, they are also going soft on Bharatiya Janata Party, and in fact, going by my sources in Shiv Sena, they have clearly, said this to me that this time around in Parliament session also they are going to go soft on various issues as far as government is concerned.
But does that also translate into Thackeray faction support for the vice presidential candidate of NDA?
Well, that is something which is yet to be seen. But as far as the bills that government is going to bring in the House, as far as the issues that Shiv Sena used to raise in the House in the last session, that is not going to take place in this session. This is what I can confirm for our viewers. So the strategy of Shiv Sena is that the divide should not reflect on key issues, and also to go soft on government and government related issues. This is the clear strategy which at least I am being told. My sources are confirming to me in Shiv Sena.
Right. Siddhant, thank you so much. Siddhant, they're explaining to us what this decision by the Thackeray faction of Shiv Sena really means. Shifting focus to Tamil Nadu now. News just coming in about the Chief Minister's response as far as the violence is concerned. M.K. Stalin responds to the Tamil Nadu violence in Kallakurichi, says those responsible for Kallakurichi violence would be brought before justice. He also said violent protests are detrimental to Tamil Nadu's growth story. So that's the update that we have. Purnima Murli with me. Purnima, so this is what the government suspects, that violence was orchestrated, it was not spontaneous.
Absolutely. In fact, they say that this was something that was planned, considering that these were not peaceful protesters. They wanted to ensure that violence erupts there, which is why they've damaged many properties of the school and also torched the private buses. And the court also has taken cognizance of this, saying that those who planned these protests, the violent protests, strict action should be taken against them and they should be identified at the earliest. Meanwhile, MK Stalin, at an event today, has said that violent protests are detrimental to Tamil Nadu's growth story and those responsible for the violence would be brought before justice. All of them now saying that these were something that were planned and that to ensure that such violent protests do not happen and such protests are not planned, they have taken strict action is what they will be taking strict action is what both the state police as well as MK Stalin has said.
Right. So that translates into more crackdown as far as AIADMK is concerned. You've already told us 2 members from their IT cells under the scanner. If the government suspects this violence was political, more arrests?
Well, more arrests likely. Some of the protesters were detained earlier, but late last evening, ADMK IT wing tweeted that 2 of their members have been arrested for provocating protests, and that action will be taken against those who are responsible. So ADMK now says that this is a political vendetta against ADMK when they had no say in the protests. Meanwhile, police officers say that those who are those who are behind these will be arrested, including the 2 ADMK members. So political war words between the DMK and the ADMK continues over the incident.
Purnima Murali, thank you so much for getting us all those details about the situation as it is unfolding in Tamil Nadu. In neighbourhood Karnataka, former Chief Minister of the state and Leader of Opposition Siddaramaiah has reiterated on Sunday that he will not contest assembly polls after 2023 and that he would not contest from Chamundeshwari constituency again. He also added that he will not even accept nomination to the Rajya Sabha and will retire from electoral politics. Siddaramaiah said that he was upset with the local leaders of Chamundeshwari who did not work, and that led to his humiliating defeat in 2018 by over 30,000 votes. He, however, dropped hints that he could contest from the Varuna segment, which is currently being represented by his son Yatindra Siddaramaiah. Harish Upadhyay is tracking this. Harish, explain to us, is this because of the infighting that is happening? I know you've reported on the birthday fight between DK Shivkumar and Siddaramaiah. Is this in any way connected?
The election, Siddaramaiah to tell all his workers, all his loyalists that this would be his last as a leverage whenever High Court has to decide who.
I'm losing that line with you, Harish. We'll try and reconnect. But the information that Harish Upadhyay was giving us is that perhaps this decision or this announcement by Siddaramaiah is trying to find a leverage with the Congress High Command to extract his pound of flesh. Is that a strategy? We don't know. But as far as this moment is concerned, what we do know is Siddaramaiah is declaring that 2023 would be his last election, that he will retire from electoral politics, that he is upset with the Chamundeshwari local leadership for not supporting him enough. That's why he lost that. He's also indicating that the constituency Varuna, which his son holds, he could fight an election from there. But what does this really mean as far as internal dynamics of Congress party in Karnataka is concerned? In the last few days, Dalit leaders have also highlighted that infighting in Congress leaders of Karnataka is detrimental to the health of the party. Harish, you're back with us. We lost that line with you. I was just asking you whether this decision of Siddaramaiah has anything to do with the infighting within the party.
Well, it definitely is a message being sent across to the party and Siddaramaiah loyalists at election, and at the end, Congress has to decide to lead the party, especially Congress comes to form the government in 2023. Then this would be used as a card stating that it's his last stint. He should be given an opportunity. We've already heard some sort of a suggestion that went in a few weeks back where both the candidates said that if indeed Congress comes to power, then the tenure should be shared between Siddaramaiah and DK Siddaramaiah becoming the Chief Minister first. So in that context, you have...
Lost that line with Harish again, but Harish Upadhyay, they're highlighting what could have led to Siddaramaiah making that announcement. Let me take you back to the Parliament session, which is underway. We told you about the voting, the nomination papers, etc. that's happening on the sidelines of the monsoon session that has begun now. It began from today. Ahead of the session, Prime Minister Modi said there should be open debate and discussion and that he is hoping for productive and fruitful session. The centre is all set to introduce 24 bills, including the Cantonment Bill and the Multi-State Cooperative Societies Bill. On the other hand, the opposition is all set to raise multiple issues, starting with the Agni Path recruitment scheme to the armed forces and the issue of unparliamentary words that have been updated by the Secretariat. Meanwhile, Lok Sabha has been adjourned till 2 p.m. due to the presidential election voting taking place in the Parliament premises, whereas Rajya Sabha has been adjourned till tomorrow.
सदन देश का नेतृत्व करे, सदन के सभी माननीय सदस्य राष्ट्र में नई ऊर्जा भरने के लिए निमित्त बने, उस अर्थ में ये सत्र भी बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। हम हमेशा सदन को
strength of our civilization, and I am grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister and the leadership that an humble man like me from Kisan family who would never have got education but for scholarship has been given this historic opportunity. I take it as a major milestone reflection of the events in which we are at the moment. I am grateful. Thank you.
राज्यसभा में राज्यसभा चलाना has been a very challenging experience. Sir.
Jagdeep Dhankar being repeatedly asked by the media persons present there, how difficult is it going to be for him to run the Rajya Sabha? That question coming up repeatedly because Trinamool Congress is one of the lead opposition parties in the upper house, and we all know about the relationship that was shared by Jagdeep Dhankar as Governor of West Bengal with the ruling party there. Constant run-ins is the backdrop in which Jagdeep Dhankar will be greeted once he takes the chair of chairperson of Rajya Sabha. Why I'm saying that is that it's a given that the NDA candidate of the vice presidential polls will have it very easy. Mara Shakil is with me there. Mara, that question which is there on the minds of all of us reporters, how difficult or easy will it be for Jagdeep Dhankar as the chairperson of Rajya Sabha? He was asked that question, didn't answer.
Yes, and he highlighted what Mr. Nadu had said, that he is a Kisan.
के लिए ये एक मेजर माइलस्टोन मानता हूं कि साधारण किसान का बेटा आज नॉमिनेशन कर आया है। मैं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री का कृतज्ञ हूं